Good evening, everybody. A little bit of an impromptu live ramble. I'm your host, Cat79, aka Chris, not joined by my usual co-host. She's actually a little occupied right now. And on top of that, she isn't up to speed on the topic we're going to talk about. But luckily, we do have another expert on the matter. Well, expert, I say, but he's really my best friend. I like to talk shit with. This is Werewolf River, aka Ian. Here.
Any man who must say I am a co-host is no true co-host. But hello, everybody.
I I love that you opened up with probably one of my favorite characters in the series' lines, because, yeah, judging by the jaunty theme and this thing, we're obviously here to talk about Mario Galaxy again. Game of Thrones. It's been 15 years since Game of Thrones came out as of yesterday, so we are now living in an era where it's been 15 years since that show took the world by storm and became a phenomena where for years it was the cornerstone of premiere television that you can get on cable before famously crashing and burning in its last seasons due to circumstances that were just ill thought out. But most people will still remember that, yes, it was good for a time. So that's what we're here to kind of celebrate.
Yeah, for a long time it was all anyone could talk about. There were all the memes of like this character, and even for a while it was actually almost hard to find like fantasy or sci-fi films that didn't have a Game of Thrones actor in it.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Force Awakens had Gwendolyn Christie, Terminator Genesis, Emilia Clarke. I think there were other examples, but some of them are slipping my mind.
Kid,
Those are
ha-
just the big ones there.
Kit Harington appeared in The Eternals, and Peter Dinklage was in a couple of comedies after this. He was in Pixels. He was the dwarf in Endgame. It's like Infinity War. It's like, yeah, this thing had its fingers everywhere. The joke was people were credited as Game of Thrones actors, like Max von Sydow of Exorcist fame and all these other like great films was listed as a Game of Thrones actor joining a Star Wars movie back at the time.
Yeah,
So like
and even yeah.
I wonder if Sean Bean is just as recognized as Ned Stark as he is as Boromir. But then again, I didn't realize it was the same guy playing him until years later because I just for some reason didn't connect the two. But it's obvious now.
Yeah. My brother had the same thing with Brad Dourif in Two Towers. He didn't realize that was Chucky until recently. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, so Game of Thrones, that is like the first big premier thing you think of when it comes to modern literature fantasies that isn't Harry Potter or Twilight. It's A Song of Ice and Fire, though most people probably know it better by Game of Thrones because of the show. But yeah, this is one of those properties that it aimed to ground fantasy while also giving you some of the like craziest out there stuff you've ever seen. Although compared to the books, the show is a little more muted in terms of its fantastical elements. I hear.
Yes, it is. I mean, I've only read the first book, and I've only read the first book all the way through. I've read Night of Seven Kingdoms and Fire and Blood, and I'm like almost halfway through the second book, which is Clash of Kings. And yeah, definitely. Like even watching clips from the because when I first read the book, I went back to rewatch clips of the show to be like, how does this compare? And yes, it does at times feel like the fantasy world building element is a little more subdued than it is in. It's a little more subdued than it is in the book. So yeah, that's definitely true. But
But yeah, like I said, this was like the premiere show HBO had for a while because they had shows like Sopranos and Deadwood and Oz and all that stuff. And of course, once those were wrapping up, their next big project ended up being a fantasy show where the creators were probably surprised they were getting uh, another season for because it's fantasy is a hard sell. I mean, ask the Legend of Earthsea attempts, or even the attempts at getting the Golden Compass adapted and all that such.
yeah, fantasy at that point, as Lindsay Ellis said, had plenty of success in film, but on the small screen on television, it was as she put it, like you had a fan. You had a fan cult following on Reddit status, like with Mists of Avalon or Merlin on Sci-Fi. Generally, the Sci-Fi channel is where you would usually see fancy stuff on TV, and it would usually be kind of low budget, like the
Hmm.
Jason and the Argonauts miniseries I remember watching. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing about this show is not only was it a fantasy show, it was a fantasy show with HBO money. I mean, granted, the first season we're talking about is more muted and subdued compared to the money they will burn through making these elaborate set pieces and visuals that are just jaw dropping. That you say, is this TV? In fact, Game of Thrones is often brought up in the conversation of TV being able to compete with cinema, because back then it was like, oh, in movies you can only get certain visuals and certain types because the movies had the bucks and the time to do that, and shows were limited by quick turnaround schedules and this and that. But when syndicated cable, when cable television came about to make dedicated shows like Sopranos, Deadwood, all that kind of stuff, people were able to like really invest in things to get you like quality. I mean, one just look at for our own New Mexico over here, Breaking Bad. That is a cornerstone of mature audience storytelling that was made from cable, and that one, yeah, I think those shows prove that sometimes you don't need the most budget or the most effects to make an impactful show. You just need to have characters people can rally behind, compelling storylines, and just memorable moments that become water cooler topics for the next week, and not in a cheap soap opera way, because those happen all the time. Someone dies to come back. Someone's actually a twin of this. Someone actually slept with their relative without realizing that. That's all common soap
Yeah.
opera fare, but
Yeah.
it happens at such a frantic pace that it's like that's just another Tuesday when you hear like, oh, you banged your cousin.
Yeah.
But yeah, whereas funny we mentioned that because in this show that kind of stuff is a central theme, because
Yeah.
royals they be crazy, they be kind of smoking a little bit of that Alabama pipe and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I remember Game of Thrones being a thing because I remember seeing that picture that's become a meme of Sean Bean in the coat with the big ass swords with the wallpaper saying winter is coming, and that's like a okay. And I never paid much mind to it because I didn't have cable or TV or HBO, but the I remember I kept seeing the sigil of House Stark, the dire wolf, and I kept for some reason thinking it was an interpretation of the 2014 legendary Godzilla just because of the way it kind of looked.
Me too, actually. Like when I first saw that too. Yeah. And funny thing, the first time I remember seeing that sigil was when there was this animated show called I can't remember for the life of me what it was called. It might have been like Fangirls or something. But yeah, it was this woman wearing a Stark shirt. And I do remember genuinely thinking, oh, cool, a Goji fan. Then I saw it on a Game of Thrones shirt. I was like, oh man. But
Well, yeah,
also like, interesting. Yeah.
and then you would think a show like this would drag my attention because on the sheer basis of having dragons. Although, if you watch any parody, one of the often repeated jokes is the fact that the dragons take their time to become a central figure for the thing. Like
Yeah.
it's the famous South Park meme.
Yeah.
Guys, trust me, trust me. The dragons are coming and they're going to be spectacular. Which is I remember that's how Jesus Jay, our friend, likes to remember Game of Thrones is the jokes about that South Park did with that episode taking the piss out of him with Butters frustrated trying to talk to George R. Martin, who just keeps on obsessing about the size of people's dongs in his story, and I'm laughing, going,
Yeah.
and there's people who say they hear the Game of Thrones theme and are just hearing the little acapella wiener version that was sung in
Yeah,
that
I
South Park
remember
episode.
that.
But no, but honestly, I started getting into it. Well, I know for a fact that my friend Megan Turtles and Monkeys, she has been following the show for a long time because she comes to follow a lot of shows that I end up start watching. Like she started watching Walking Dead. I started watching Walking Dead because she said you guys see this, and I thought that was a show too. But let me see, did Walking Dead come out before or after Game of Thrones? I gotta make sure because I
I
think
think it came out 1 year before because I think Walking Dead was 2010.
that sounds about yep, it was 2010. So yeah, so you could argue that yeah, that maybe HBO saw the formula of Walking Dead of like an adapted property, tense storylines where any character cast member, regardless of status, can just go. Because Game of Thrones certainly took that to the next level. It's like, if anything, if Walking Dead started the whole anybody could die type thing, Game of Thrones just ran with it to the point where I think that kind of became its identity for people, even though it's a lot more than that. But people like to think of, oh, well, this is a Game of Thrones scenario where it's like, free for all. Even your most highest paid actor, that's like the one everyone knows getting their head sliced off in like the end of the season is like, passe.
Part of the course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but look, no, no. Those are moments are big because they are. I mean, yeah, the book was kind of like that. I heard the book was famous because it was
Yeah.
like apparently Martin always felt that Tolkien's stuff, while seminal and influential, did kind of seem not grounded enough, or there were some things that were just a little too like
Some
convenient.
questions, yeah, questions he didn't think to ask. Like the one he always, or at least the quote of his that always gets brought up is his quote of, Tolkien can say that Aragorn ruled for decades and that he was a good king because he was a good man, but he never asked what was Aragorn's tax policy. Did he have one? What did he do about the rest of the orcs? Obviously, they killed the ones who worked for Sauron, but what did he do with the other ones? Did he? Yeah,
So yeah, and that usually some of the best stories end up starting as an answer to another story. Like, well, in a similar vein, Frank Herbert's Dune was also an answer to stuff like Tolkien and the hero's journey and stuff like that. It was more of a commentary on that kind of stuff's actually a bit of a problem, and people did around with it and thought, oh, cool, space worm, giant
yeah,
sandworm. And to the point where he had to make Messiah to say, "Hey, listen, that whole arc we went through in part one is actually something that is gonna like be consequential. It's not just the
yeah,
good triumphs over evil and guys up because there in Dune there is no good and evil. I mean, there's people who are definitely more malicious than others, the Harkonnens for one, but it's not like
yeah,
I mean, and you could argue that Duke Leto was like a virtuous guy, but the overall thing of Dune is that it's a very gray, messy world where things blend and things aren't so clear cut, and what seems like
yeah.
a holy war, like the Messiah thing ends up turning into a crusade where lots of people are burnt up in fire and die. It's like it's meant to be oh shit, and I'm so glad the movies are not, looking like they're not going to shy away from that with the new upcoming Dune Part 3.
Yeah. And it's in many respects like Game of Thrones, like and you like is also similar to that, where it's kind of there was long ago a big war, between two opposing factions, but can it be said the good guys won? This is actually something that I know Martin has like taken pride in, is the fact that he kind of feels with Robert's Rebellion there almost is no right or wrong answer as to like should it have been fought? Should it not have been fought? Did they go too far? Did they not go far enough? And that's something he's always talked about. It seems to have like sort of pride in. Yeah,
Well, yeah, it makes sense because look at us. Look at World War II. For the longest time taught in high school, those things was considered like it was fought for noble men fighting for noble reasons, and the good guys won in the end. And as you get older and start seeing more reading and literature on stuff more involved, and you realize it quite wasn't as clear cut. Like America was famously isolationist before we got a big, blast in the face on December 7th. So we decided, okay, that's it, fine, we're going to roll up sleeves. But I mean, if you to read it as it was taught to you back then, it was like we were minding our own business when these crazy tankies would try to blow us up, and then you realize no, there's a whole thing that led to that. There's more nuances there. Both guys storming the beaches of Normandy were guys who were praying to whatever deity they believed in that they would at least make it home and not be holding their own guts. Both sides were running with that thing. It wasn't like, okay, now, granted, Nazism always will be a bad thing. Don't make me say that. Oh, there were good Nazis too. Don't misconstrue that right away. I'll say that right now. But in the end, it's definitely a lot more than just good and evil, like we like to boil things down to. And you gotta admit, Robert's Rebellion is probably like that, where I'm sure everybody in the rebellion thought they were fighting a noble and just cause against the crazy Targaryens and their mad king, and
yeah,
and you hear Ned Stark tell his stories to his kids about why things had happened. So when you see them actually go back to history and relive events, long stories, but and realize that things weren't as clean cut as it was told to them in history, it really does present
yeah.
things like even you're going like, huh. Like, for example, we were told about how the Targaryens were bloodthirsty, mad dragon riders, and you see a guy like, was it Rhaegar? I think was the one that was with Lyanna Stark.
Oh,
Rhaegal, Rhaegal,
yeah,
Prince,
yeah. Rhaegal, I think
Prince,
was his name.
yeah, Prince
Or,
Rhaegal. You see that the guy seemed to be
no, wait, yeah, it was Rhaegar. Sorry, you're
yeah,
right.
he seemed
Sorry.
to be a stand-up dude, despite having to like sword fight everybody to death with. But still, he seemed like a stand-up dude. And hell, I think that's what Game of Thrones was. Is it wants to play it more realistic, like saying, yeah, you do get your outwardly super malicious characters like Cersei Lannister and stuff, but and you got your honorable guys like Ned Stark. But a lot of the most intriguing characters in Game of Thrones are guys with shades of gray, but not in a very cynical like oh everyone's bad, everyone sucks way. It's just that there are nuances where you stop and think maybe you're not as bad as I thought. Like yeah, you see someone like Jaime Lannister, push a 9-year-old boy out a window after screwing his sister. You're going like, Jesus Christ, what a what a scumbag. And then you see later episodes where he's like talking about how he mocked for being the guy who turned against his own king. He stained his white cloak. He let go of his family name by joining an order that prevents you from owning land. It's like, and you see that he does stuff because of his self interest, but also because there is a nobility to him. Like in any other story, Jaime Lannister would be like the hero that rides in on the white horse to save the day.
Yeah, with some of his facets. Like again, it doesn't ignore that there are bad things about these people, but it's also like, because like even like Tywin Lannister, who seems like someone who in any other story he probably would have been a pretty one-dimensional villain, but there are moments where like, I mean, because in some ways he's very ruthless, but he also understands the game and he understands how to talk to people, and he's somewhat, he's intimidating, but he also, no, he also, there's some bit of like empathy he would have to have, and like even like ability to like humble himself. Like when he first goes to Oberyn, and Oberyn is like, why do you have such an interest in Dorne all of a sudden? And, he gives this long speech, but he has to admit at the end, well, there's a Targaryen across the sea with dragons, and you guys are the only ones who resisted the Targaryens when they first arrived. So, even though like he maybe didn't have respect for Dorne, he recognizes, I need your help, so
Yeah, and there's scenes too where famously he's had a very very hard relationship with his dwarf son Tywin Tyrion due to the
Tyrion.
death of his wife, childbirth. And the moment I saw and I analyzed to death, but it's a great moment, is the moment when he's talking about how he had to put the needs of your family over yourself, and he says, "Oh, really? When did you ever put your needs away before the great Lannister name? The day that you were born." Like he wanted to throw him out
Yeah.
into the sea, but he says, "Don't forget, you are a Lannister and you're my son." Or in some weird, twisted ways, his way of saying, saying, I can never forgive you, but you're still part of the family name, so I can't kill you. So until I can't prove that you aren't
Yeah.
even mine, you are my son. So it's like,
Yeah. And it's also, and again, it even is kind of interesting because, like, even though Tywin does show a lot of disdain towards Tyrion, you'll also notice that when everyone leaves after that council meeting, he asks Tyrion to stay. And the reason for that, which a lot of people believe, is that even Tywin has to recognize that Tyrion's the only one who can keep up with him mentally,
I think
in his own. Yeah.
one of the best lines we keep quoting from him is when you got Lena Headey playing Cersei Lannister, who is probably top 10 queen bitches in media. Like you got ladies from Mare Maleficent, those type of people. This Cersei Lannister is up there only because of her pettiness, just pure spite and pettiness, and her, so her never ceasing ability to shoot herself in the foot without realizing it and calling it a win.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there's a great scene where she's talking to Tywin, and he says like, and I know you love reminding me of this line where he's all like, "I'm trying to say like you don't you don't trust because I'm a woman. I don't trust you not because you're a woman. I
I
don't."
distrust you because you're not as smart as you think you are.
Yeah, and and that actually is to her detriment. You find out in the end. Yeah, he was right. But
Yeah.
but
Because
yes,
it's because of her that the High Septon takes over the city because she tries to exploit something she doesn't fully have a grasp on, which is religious. Yeah,
it
which is
is.
yeah,
Yeah, like I said, it's good to watch it. But yeah, there's these characters that yes, there's characters you hiss at and love to hate. Like one of the ones that I just love that I both love him and can't quite hate him but love him too is Peter Baelish. He's just as
yeah,
Littlefinger. That guy is just another level of smarmy. Like it, uh, if a snake was a person in human form, Littlefinger definitely embodies that trait. But he can still look as like a lamb, and you think, okay, he's not that big of an issue. And that's the problem with Littlefinger. People underestimate them at their peril.
yeah.
But Aiden Gillen
And the rest,
just does a great job with that character. Any scene he's with, it's just gosh, like I wouldn't mind a whole spin-off Rise of Peter Baelish miniseries just
yeah,
on that.
yeah, that'd be cool. Because he's such a yeah. Because the interesting thing about him is like again, he's sort of a gray character because like a lot of time because like it's clear that he doesn't really want that there are some things he does in the show that he didn't like want to do. Like he didn't really want to betray Ned eventually, but he did it because of how. And it's interesting because you never because like he's the kind of person who can like make you see things his way even when he's kind of messed up and like disturbing, and like the fact that you almost never know what exactly his plans are. It's like on one hand he's like scary, on one hand he's kind of sympathetic when you understand like, where he came from and his past, and that's why he's such a good character, and like in the books in the books he's like still the same, but like the one thing I did kind of like reading the book versus the show is like I kind of feel like in the books it's a little more clear why he doesn't want Stannis on the throne, but that's because he has a whole monologue where he explains to Ned, like, you can give Stannis the throne, but Stannis won't love you for that. Stannis will bear you not much loyalty, and that's why we should stick with Joffrey,
Oh, now that is a guy I was going to mention. That is the guy everyone loves to hate. But the point is that the actor did such a good job doing him that he had to retire from acting just due to how much vitriol the character would get, just because he was such a little shit.
Yeah, such a little shit. And I guess people wanted to take it out on a real person, and so
Right.
they decided, like, let's go after the actor.
Yeah, but no,
Who's doing him in real life.
he's happily retired, and I think now he teaches acting studies and such like that. He's a teacher now. But like I said, it's so funny that you look at the little kid that Batman saved in Batman Begins, gives him a little batarang, no, grappling hook, and you see that's the same kid playing one of the most okay. He's probably the closest to full on evil, but mostly because of his upbringing. Spoiled,
Yeah.
bratty, temperamental, impulsive. Zero impulse control on this character.
Zero impulse. And it's kind of interesting because I feel like George R. R. Martin, whenever he gets interviewed about this character, it feels like he's always trying to steer the conversation to point out that Joffrey is a little more, at least I feel like George R. R. Martin feels that Joffrey's a little more complex than sometimes even we give him credit for, because he's always pointing stuff out. And yeah, it is kind of interesting how you can sort of look at Joffrey and you can see his ruthless acts, and then you suddenly remember that Robert Baratheon in an earlier season says, you think it's honor that's keeping the peace? You think it's honor that's holding the realm together? It's fear and blood. And isn't any surprise that Joffrey ended up what he did when Robert had that kind of philosophy,
And
And he also, and like even Martin admits that he probably puts all of himself in there because he did actually used to imagine, like, when he was in middle school, like forcing people to fight to the death. And then you see Joffrey, at the tourney celebrating his name day. And yeah,
yeah, I mean
and
that's
all the vibe.
he's so fun to watch though, and and
Yeah.
when he does have a point, you can't help but laugh. And also, so a character with that big of an ego and little lesson, it's always good to see him get knocked down a peg or two. Like one that you love to refer to me is the part where Tyrion is telling off Joffrey. He's telling this, he's saying like that you can't tell, yeah, uh,
Yeah.
talk to a king like that.
It, yeah. You can't talk. Well, it's a line of, you are talking to a king, and then Tyrion slaps him and he says, and now I've struck a king. Did my hand fall off my wrist?
That is such a great
Because
moment.
yeah, it's also the other. There's also another great line during that scene. It's actually not by Tyrion. It's by Sandor Clegane, where Tyrion, he's dragging Joffrey through the streets, and Joffrey's like, kill. He's like, I'll kill them all. I'll kill them all. And I think Sandor like says, they want the same for you.
Yeah, and it's all like I says. The character dynamics is what's about to show, because I know people think right now Game of Thrones, it's blood, boobs, and dragon. That's like the big thing, but
Yeah,
part of what makes it work is just all the character dynamics. I mean, I think that's probably because the
yeah,
books themselves are just so many characters with so many converging plot threads and cross plans and schemes. It's just it all manages to become an orchestra that you go like, wow, this is quite fascinating.
yeah,
And whenever you see those lines converge in a messy way, that's when the fireworks really start. Like, for example, you have like the infamous Red Wedding occurs, and you got hell, even characters who we should see as bad are going, Jesus Christ, wait, are you sure this was right? Like again in that same scene, it's
yeah.
Tywin and Tyrion having an argument about the about the consequences of
Morality of
fallout
them.
of is it? But
Yeah,
tell me why it's no different killing some men at dinner versus 1,000 on the
yeah.
battlefield, something like that.
Yeah, and then Tyrion be like, so that's why you did it, to save lives,
End the
to
war. Yeah.
yeah, to end the war, to protect the family. You want to write a song for the dead Starks? Go ahead, write one.
I
I'm
like
in this world a little while longer. Yeah,
And I love when he tells them like the North will remember this. Good. Let them
let
remember
them
what
remember what happens
when they march
when you
south.
march on the South.
That is again, I realize that for them being such a bad family and stuff, we do end up quoting the Lannisters like crazy. And what's funny
Yeah.
is that there's so much nuance in the character of someone like Tyrion, who you first meet him, you think, oh, he's a philandering, joke character who is like, petty to everybody, a smartass to everyone. And you start seeing scenes where you go like, there's actually some depth to the guy. In fact, I did read that one thing that was cut out, people wish wasn't cut out, was his whole backstory about his first engagement to a prostitute. That thing
Yeah,
was,
to Aisha. Yeah.
yeah,
Taisha.
Taisha, and they actually filmed a scene for that, and then they ended up saying, well, people are not going to remember the story, so they actually nixed it out. And people keep
Yeah.
saying that because that becomes a big point 4 seasons later when he finally confronts Tywin on the John, and he brings that up
Yeah.
again, and people and even the writers were like, would anybody even remember that whole backstory we mentioned in almost 3 years ago?
Yeah. Look, admittedly, that's because in the books it gets to be referenced a lot in like Tyrion's inner thoughts, something you don't have in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they didn't know how to adapt that into dialogue for whatever reason, which, generally the show was pretty good at for most things, like adapting stuff that's from the prose into the dialogue just to make sure that the audience gets it. But I guess with this one, they didn't know how to keep bringing it up, how to keep bringing up the Taisha thing for 4 seasons. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, like I said though, this show, like I'm mentioning blood, boobs, and dragons, but I think the thing that makes the first season stick out is how this was their first run out there. Even though they had a good sized budget, they were sure like if we screwed. I mean, they had a failed pilot they had to reshoot from scratch, which was probably expensive to do. And they're thinking, if this doesn't land, we were setting up all these threads and clockwork, but if this doesn't land, and it's us on the street. So that's
yeah,
why they were really fine tuning stuff so that you get like some of the best scenes people remember from season one aren't any of the skirmishes or bloodletting. It's like the conversations and scheming and stuff. I mean all the quotes like any scene with Peter Baelish talking to Ned or to Cat Scott Stark, or any scene where you got like Jon Snow dealing with Sir Alistair and the people at the wall who are giving him shit for being one of the few trained guys who shows compassion for his fellow men. A lot of these guys being runaways, rapists, murderers, all that kind of stuff. Old scum, to quote Andrews from Alien 3. But yeah,
yeah,
so like I said, you got all these the dynamics, the back and forths, and it's just it ingrains in your mind. I mean, like
yeah.
one thing I've been watching season one just for giggles, and I remember there's some characters I see that I forgot were in the beginning season. I go, oh, this person. I know they didn't make it to the end, but they were so memorable. Like the water dancer, Soriel, I believe his name was
Yeah.
the teacher that trains Arya in all matters of combat.
Yeah. He's a fun character, yeah, and I remember his story. Well, I mean, I feel back because now I'm forgetting if this was in the books where he tells a story about how Arya needs to see and not listen, because and he tells a story about how there was this lord trying to figure out who was the smartest, and he told everyone to praise his cat, his cat that he said was a different color than it actually was, and I guess it's like an Emperor's New Clothes thing of like he was waiting for someone to challenge him in what he was saying, and yeah, sorry.
That sounds like again, Martin was full of stuff like that. That's just very, it adds flavor, and that's the thing about the show. It's very flavorful, and yes, it gets racy. You got Theon banging the local redhead all the time. You got, Tyrion pissing on the wall. You got
Yeah,
scenes in brothels where they're not afraid to entice the clientele by flashing a thing or two. Yes, you get
yeah,
beheadings and blood galore. When the mountain gets bested in a lance fight, he ends up taking it out on his horse. Where I forgot that happened. I watched it again. I went, I actually
yeah.
wanted to
Oh,
laugh because it's almost Monty Python-ish when that
yeah,
happens. On one hand, you're going, "Oh God, the poor horse," but the second hit, and you see even more like outrageous blood, you start going, "It's almost funny because it's the
yeah.
equivalent of a kid breaking his wooden sword when he doesn't get his way."
Doesn't get his way, but now he's a gigantic man with a real sword and a bloodlust. Yeah,
Yeah, and I love how there's characters where I'll meet and say, "Oh yeah, I forgot where the storyline went," and they like die a second later, like the squire to John Arwen, who was the lance guy who was on the receiving end of the mountain.
yeah,
But like I said, yeah, it's just there was just so much to like really sink your teeth into this show that no wonder it picked up a second season. And when it started to get more into the meat of the story of the lore of the books, that's when really great moments of television get talked about. Like
yeah.
famously,
Exactly.
Oberon Martell, the Viper versus the Mountain is such a big talked about point.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of the things that, like, even having not watched the show, I knew about, and I'd heard of. And I remember my brother actually being the first one to tell me about it, and then like that and the Red Wedding. I remember the Red Wedding because I had actually seen clips of that before I'd even seen the show, and not even like willingly. It was like I was watching some video that was talking about character deaths, and they had shown that. So on one level, I remember when I first actually started watching this show, and I saw Rob, and I was like, "Oh crap, yeah."
Yeah, and then oh, it's so amusing to me that the lady he betrays the river run for, it ends up is Una Chaplin, the granddaughter of Charlie Chaplin, who, as we all know later, would go on to play probably the hottest thing on Pandora,
Yeah,
with
definitely.
meringue. Yeah,
No objections from me.
yeah. So just saying that there though is that it's so amusing to see that she got her start here, and I go, and
Yeah,
you don't really see that in her character, because she's the the person to be queened by Rob, that he ends up falling in love with on the field. And you go, oh, this is like this is kind of like Aragon and Arwen, if you would compare
yeah,
it to it like that. Except, thanks to political machinations, this story has a sad ending. I know people like to draw the line of like, okay, I can accept horse beheadings, main characters getting flayed, lances and hearts, but I draw the lines at pregnant women's getting it, and I'm
that's
like,
bad. Damning. And then that's not even in the book. But I mean, it's added because it gives like an extra level of like tragedy of like, at this one moment, it's like, oh, this happy feeling, we're gonna have a child named Ned, and it's like Ned's gonna be reborn, right
and then
before
that
real life.
happens, and you go,
Yeah.
ow, but it
Oh
sticks with you.
Jesus.
It sticks with you. I
Yeah,
mean,
it sticks with us.
I think
Yeah.
more haunting than Rob getting the arrows and his wife getting stabbed and everything is just Kate Stark's mournful wail at seeing her son die, and she just kills the Frey girl, just not knowing it's not going to make a difference. Her son is dead. And this is already her after her lowest point of life. And obviously spoilers for a 15-year-old show, but I'm just saying that's like everyone
Yeah.
talks about it, but that's like you got.
Yeah.
I love how she put a lot into that moment, because you can think about it. Husband, honorable fool, goes into city, ends up dead. Family is scattered to the winds, where you're not sure if they made it out alive or not. Your daughter's being married to a monster who's just, you know, terrorizing left and right. And then you got your hope of your kingdom, your other elder son, your firstborn too, I believe. So that's when you're seeing all that happen at once. Again, it's kind of sad that the fantasy elements were toned down, because I believe that goes into the whole Lady Stoneheart thing, which is a whole
Yeah.
other can of worms. But I guess seeing the show, they didn't want to try to reconcile that plot thread along with other plot threads, because I think in the books it's currently unresolved. So they were like,
Yeah.
what do we do?
Well, what do we do? Well, just axe it for now, and maybe the thought was that they could bring it back some other time. It's funny because in some ways, like I remember when Game of Thrones the show first ended, people are like, there were people saying, there were anime fans saying like, oh well, now you know what it feels like when the show catches up to the manga.
Yes, and the filler has to be made. And
Yeah,
and there's characters that side characters, and we got your main characters that are awesome, like Sansa Stark, Ned Stark. I mean, a lot of Starks actually, but the
yeah,
Lannisters. But you also got side characters like Tommen Giant's Bane. That, I think that's his name. The big bearded fellow,
Tormund. Yeah,
Tormund. Tommen's the Baratheon boy. Yeah, but Tormund.
yeah,
That I remember I first saw him as a Norwegian with the face hugger hand in the Thing prequel,
and the thing.
and then I saw him as this guy, and he was in anime, he's like that one brash character where you go like, man, this guy is a bit of a fool. Like he's strong, he's powerful, but he's headstrong and stupid, and that he's not gonna get too far. And he turns out to be
Yeah,
one of the few guys that makes it to the end of the whole series.
yeah, he's like Gray from fairy tales, sort of.
That's a good way to describe it.
I mean, yeah, Gray. I feel like would do would kill a giant when he was a child, and well, I mean, Gray probably wouldn't do that. Kill a giant when he's a child, and then snuggle up in a bed with his like suckle at suckle at her teeth.
Wait,
It's funny because I remember there's even an entire scene in the book, and I'm trying to remember if this was in the show, but there's just an entire part where a woman explains why whenever there's a human that has giant's blood in them, it's always a human male and a giant woman, because anytime a giant tries to go down a human woman, it ends very messily.
oh
And
no. But yeah,
yeah,
I wonder if that's behind Gregor Clegane's massive size, because he's always been described as a mountain of a man. And
yeah,
then
even in the book, it seems like they're kind of implying that he's like unnaturally big, but they weirdly never say that. They never say that he has that the Cleganes have giant's blood in them. It's just kind of he's just freakishly tall for whatever reason.
and it's funny, he went to three different actors throughout the course of the series.
Yeah, at first he was actually played by a guy who people said actually handles a long sword the way you're supposed to, that I guess the last guy didn't. And then he was played by a Predator actor,
Ian
wasn't
White.
he, in like the second, yeah, in the second season, who I always remember his voice. I do think out of all the mountains, he had the coolest voice out of all of them when he's like saying, "We wouldn't expect you till tomorrow, my lord." And yeah.
Yeah, man.
I guess the only problem with him is that he didn't look like he's quite strong enough to like crush someone's head, you know. So that's why I
Then
guess.
you got then that guy who did the third mountain. He is famously in real life on record as one of the strongest men in the world doing those strongman challenges. So he figured. I mean, you look at this guy's size and you buy that he'd be able to cave in a skull because, contrary to what
Yeah.
Benedict Cumberbatch made it look like, it is very, very, very hard to compress a skull, even with raw
Yes.
strength. So you have to be
Yeah.
supernatural or just freakishly unnaturally strong to be able to do that.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah. And then was he the mountain actor for like the rest of the show,
Yes.
or yeah?
Yeah, and I think
Okay,
he,
so they just put like zombie makeup on.
because I know he did all those advertisements as himself parroting the mountain and for like pistachios and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
think that guy wouldn't be such a bad Zangief now that I think about it.
Yeah. That could have worked.
But so what's great about this show too is there's a lot of who's of actors in here. I mean, you got Sean Bean playing the lead in Ned Stark, and that guy was probably like Lord of the Rings pedigree in lots of movies. Alec Trevelyan, you're just going like, holy shit, they got a guy like that on a show like this. That's something.
Yeah, and it's almost like fitting because one of Martin's favorite aspects about the Lord of the Rings books was Boromir's death. That was always he kind of implies that like that's sort of the inspiration for Game of Thrones attitude towards killing characters, because he said the moment Boromir died is the moment you kind of understood, oh shit, there's like real stakes in Lord of the Rings. That and
Because
Gandalf dying
that's
as
one of the
well.
Fellowship guys. Like you thought, oh, this guy
Yeah,
part of the hero team. This is the one of the Knights of the Seven, of the Round Table. He's gonna make it.
yeah.
And then when he actually, even in the movie, it's a shock when he takes it.
Yeah, so it was like a roundabout, not
Full
full
circle.
circle moment. Yeah, almost was a full circle to have Sean Bean play that character,
And he even told
and
him
like
they told him up front, yeah, you're not gonna make it past season one. He's like, okay, this will be fun, And then he thought like
yeah,
that got him excited. Like, I'm your main guy, and if you kill your main guy, then well, anyone's fair
yeah.
game.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like of course one of the reasons I think that death still shocks people is it's not even just like Ned is like the main character. It's because like him and Robert, their relationship is almost like the beating heart of that first season, or at
I
least it kind of
noticed
feels
that
like
on
it,
rewatch.
because it's all based around their own debates. Like even like the first time they're talking about Daenerys and Khal Drogo having wed, and you have that whole debate where it's like Robert is saying we need to send a bold man a knife and a bold man to wield it,
And
and Robert and Ned is trying to be like she's a little more than a child, and that always is one of my favorite conversations of the show, just that. Yeah,
it kind of begs the whole. This is gonna sound really stupid to bring up, but it's like the whole, is it right to kill baby Hitler type
yeah,
scenarios.
that kind of scenario where it's like if like yeah, because like do we chase, is it worth losing our humanity to chase after something that may potentially happen, and then that we don't even have any confirmation about. And it's funny because like on some level you understand Ned Stark's good intentions, and but you also do in a weird way kind of understand what everyone else says, when you have that, the only council meeting in the entire show that Robert's even at, where they're first discussing like, okay, now we have confirmation that Daenerys is pregnant, what do we do now? And it's interesting because like in some ways, again, it's what George likes writing, which is sort of an everyone's right, everyone's wrong, because these people are pretty cold-blooded, but on the other hand, are they not right? And like something someone pointed out about Game of Thrones, I didn't realize that is like kind of extra tragic, is that you realize that like Ned, because like in the books they make it clear that Ned almost he can't stand the sight of dead children because of what the mountain did to Elia Martell's children when
Ooh,
he first showed them draped, and he sort of is like, I never want to see anything like that again. That's why he's trying to save Daenerys, and that's also why he's trying to save Robert's kids when he finds out what's actually going on with them, and that they're
yeah.
actually the inbred children. And there's almost like a tragedy in the fact that he's fighting so hard to save those kids, and even like trying to give Cersei a chance to get away. Like he's trying to save those kids, and then it ends up being one of those kids that orders his execution.
And what's fun, I think they even said in the book and in the show that Joffrey's spur of the moment, hey, let's make a show for the crowd and kill him, was even they were like, Cersei was like, I didn't think he was gonna
Yeah.
kill him, and that's why
Yeah.
I loved I loved yeah, Tywin berating her, and she's all like, I did nothing to stop. Of course you did nothing, something like that.
Yeah. And yeah, he also he says the line of like when Cersei is like, Marjorie has a claws in Joffrey, she knows how to manipulate him, and then Tywin just coldly says, "Good. I wish you knew how to manipulate him. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this situation to begin with."
Again, Tywin is the character that locked me in of like, okay, I gotta stick with this
Yeah.
guy because I
Yeah.
and I got so excited when he was casting Godzilla King of the Monsters because of his Tywin role. I keep making the joke
Yeah.
that when he blows away that poor scientist at the Mothra's window, I say, "The Lannisters send their regards." Boom.
Yeah.
Even though it was Bruce
Yeah, I
Bolton who
know.
said that line, but still.
Yeah, Bruce Bolton, but he was saying, yeah.
But yeah, but like I said though, it's Ned's tragedy is kind of interesting. But people say, "Oh, that's why it's a cynical story." You know, the guy trying to do the right thing ends up getting screwed over in the worst way. But when you think about it, in the end, he played the long game and won the Game of Thrones. The Lannisters self-immolated to impotence, and the Stark family is now in a better position than it was before the execution and such like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So it's like because that's the thing about like Game of Thrones is that like or like even Martin's entire universe is that like it's cynical in some regards, but it doesn't like try to pretend that like okay, stuff is bad happening and that means everything's bad. Like it does acknowledge that like, there's like because like there's actually a story in Fire and Blood that I guess I won't talk about because it would be kind of spoilers for a potential future season of House of Dragon.
but
But it's like you have a more like two characters are being tried for more or less the same crime. The difference is that one of them actually, was actually very loved and respected. And there's a bunch of people who come to their aid. They're like, no, don't execute them. Don't execute this person,
mhm.
you know. And there is this idea of like being a good person or like at the very least being a good leader still pays off even in a cynical kind of even in a cynical world. So he never like tries to disregard stuff like that, and that's kind of what makes his writing tolerable. Because obviously if he just sort of said, oh, here's how everything's dark and everything's hopeless, then you'd just check out because it would get annoying.
Garth Ennis stories when the bad Garth
Yeah.
Ennis stories because the guy can do good stuff. I heard his Punisher run's amazing, but when he does
His Punisher was pretty good, but
his
yeah,
cynical
but
stuff
the
like
boys
Wanted,
comics,
the boys.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
Wanted.
the boys comics is very obnoxious. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
the Wanted comic ends with the whole "This is my face as I'm screwing you in the ass."
yeah. That's actually Mark Millar, but
Oops.
Garth Ennis and him kind of have similar problems.
Oh god,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, even Kick Ass. Thank God that the movie adaptations made the character way more likable than the original source.
the original source where he's just kind of mean spirited, angry, and snippy all the time.
It's
And it's
like,
kind
oh,
of
like I know people attribute this to Alan Moore, but the guy actually is a hopeful fella. But he just,
yeah,
he's more of a realist. But he's not like an uber asshole about it. In fact, I did get into a debate the
yeah,
other day in the server about Watchmen of all things, about how because we brought up jokes about creators that will get snippy with their fan base, like the creator of Digital Circus is kind of on social media, kind of doing funny little snipes, and that made someone says, "Oh, I'll take that over." Now Alan Moore being grumpy over this 30 layers of irony posting, and then someone said back with the whole. Okay, this is tangent, but Alan Moore, whenever someone sides with Rorschach instead of the know-it-all self-imposed savior Adrian Venn, he shows anger from Inside Out exploding, and I say, well, actually, I don't think he's meant for people to like. I said he was trying to say. My thesis is, what if superheroes were real in the world? My answer is it'd be bloody horrifying, because
yeah,
everyone, no one in Watchmen is. I mean, they have qualities that you can say, okay, that's heroic, but nobody in Watchmen is really a clean cut person. They're all messes. It's
no,
all a bunch of messes trying to make a big mess of the world less messy. But
yeah, and not even being up to the task. Or like, I mean, Alan Moore kind of leaves it like ambiguous. Like, will this work? Will this not work? Ozymandias' plan, and yeah,
But yeah, but people were like, this person got into a heated thing about saying how he's just tired about people siding with Adrian when Rorschach, tried to do what was the right thing. And someone says his narrow-minded view, brought up by his upbringing and psychopathy, is directing his view in an emotional moment rather than thinking of, because even Night Owl and Silk Spectre are like, oh shit, if we do rat, we're gonna like all those deaths for the nothing, and no, and he's all never
Yeah.
compromised. That was the whole thing. Where that's why he allows
Yeah.
himself to die at the end because he goes like, yeah, I just realized he's just not gonna be able to function in that in that world.
Yeah,
So,
in that situation, so he'd rather just be dead. Yeah.
but yeah, like I said though, but it's not really that cynical of a story when you think about it. But I'm already getting into an argument about that. But yeah, Alan Moore is not. I mean, this is the guy who wrote Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, where it is a
Yeah.
even though it's somber story at the end, it still does have a bit of a note of hope because it's a Superman story. Of course, it has to.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it has a bit of hope and like yeah, and like even like with I mean I prefer for the Man Who Has Everything when it comes to the Alan Moore Superman stories. That's the one I prefer the most.
that's
But
a good one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So,
but yeah, it's somber, but it's not like aggressively hopeless. You know,
because
like
like
other.
even Killing Joke is kind of meant to say, yeah, these two guys are loons, and they both recognize it. That's why them sharing a laugh is such a big moment. But I like how people fixated on the fact of did Batman kill the Joker or not, when even Moore's like, bloody hell, this wasn't the discourse I was trying to make.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
the whole thesis is in the
I know.
opening of Batman saying, this will
Yeah,
either one way, either I kill you or you kill me, and I wanted to stop it from getting there. That's the whole thesis.
yeah, it's all thesis. So if he killed, the Joker, it's like okay, well that's just needlessly dark for no reason.
And what was the
It
point of
doesn't
the
really.
book then?
Yeah, what was the point of this exactly?
We saw Barbara
it's
Gordon
sort
get
it's sort of like
shot, and
yeah. Yeah, it's like when someone was talking about digital circus and being like, will it end with like all the characters decide to delete the circus and delete themselves? If you believe the Soma theory that every character in that show is actually just a brain scan and they're not technically
ooh,
people,
that'd be scary.
yeah, and like they were talking about like, oh, if they discover that, are they just going to delete the circus? And there were people being like, well, then what was the point of the rest of the show talking about living? If that's how it's just going to end with everyone doing themselves.
I think that's also applied to Evangelion, the end of Eva, thinking it's one of the most violent, brutal, like cynical films made. But you look at it, it ends on a hopeful tone. The whole monologue between Kwaru, Rei, and Shinji at the very, very end is supposed to be, hey, live life. Life is messy, but live it. And it's a much more visual version of the congratulations ending that people were like confused about in the anime. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you got the whole strangling Oscar on the beach to Coda, but that's not like giving oh well he didn't learn nothing lesson. It was more of like because he relents in his strangling, and there's many interpretations between her final line of how disgusting or I feel sick, and end of Ava gave us a much more concrete okay, no more ambiguity. I mean Thrice Upon a Time gave us a no more ambiguity ending. Like, okay, this series is not about depressed guys getting fucked up. This is about people reaffirming themselves and helping themselves up. I mean, the big deal is when Shinji finally gets to his broken father Gendo, and after they were doing the whole robot fight thing and it was getting nowhere, then it turned into a more introspective thing. Then it turned into a much more thing where we realized, oh shit, the guy we thought was the big, scary, thoughtless, heartless monster is actually just a broken person in a more almost makes
Yeah.
even the most ardent Gendo haters go, oh, get pause. But like I'm saying is
No
that
fun.
it's funny how there's some things that are labeled as completely cynical and they actually aren't.
Yeah.
But then there's stuff that when you look at it, oh, this thing actually came out quite happy, and it's no. I'll tell you what's cynical. Those faith-based movies that preach to the choir without any attempt to like with nuance, like those God's Not Dead
Yeah.
movies. Those are
Oh
actually
yeah,
quite
definitely
cynical
those.
without meaning
Yeah,
like
those are. I
God.
remember watching one of those with my brother and be like, "Holy Jesus!"
Like I'm a faith guy. But even I went like, I actually said like I saw this for free on Netflix and I still want a refund.
Yeah. Oh, Netflix will give you your money back just for it,
I don't know.
have Netflix give you back like part of your subscription
Yeah,
fee.
it's just because that I mean I get what they were trying to go for, but the lack of nuance and the way it plays off, and they even do a
Yeah,
sort of happy ending code, even though the atheist teacher ends up getting run over and he ends up
you're
absolving
getting
at the
run over.
very
Yeah,
end, and then they still
yeah.
think
The atheist teacher is not even like really atheist. It's just like, oh, God didn't listen to my prayers, so now I hate him.
so
He's like God's jealous ex or something.
like Kevin
Played by
Sorbo.
Hercules.
Like Kevin Sorbo, I think I was a little more iffy with you even before your recent MAGA comment.
Yeah.
But still, ooh, like, yeah, that like I says, that's a movie where I think even though it tries to go, faith and optimism, it's a little more cynical about how only we get it. All these
Yeah.
non-believers, they're just like this
Oh,
caricature we made.
yeah, this caricature we made, and it's also like, trying to be like a battle between faith and atheism, and then suddenly there's just this random Islam story flying where it's like this has what to do with the other.
Oh yeah, okay. We went
Okay,
off
but
the we went off
getting
the
back
reservation.
to yeah, getting back to fucking
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. Well, I
So
mean, I do actually. I guess the segue would be, well, I do actually like Jonathan Pryce as the High Sparrow.
oh
See, we got
yes.
back to
Oh yeah, that one was a good. That's a good take on faith being used as a cudgel. That is a good example of that because and it backfires spectacularly on Cersei when she thought because even I
yeah,
think even other guys were saying you have no idea what you did that by bringing back the militant faith.
yeah. Bringing
Uh,
back the faith and the religious extremism, which backfires on her on multiple counts.
oh god,
And
especially the Tom and thing. Oh Tom again. That's one of the best scenes in the whole series. Is the opener? I think it's right after Joffrey has been killed and
yeah,
they're doing the vigil for him, and then Tywin has that. You've heard me talk at length how much I love that scene of Tywin trying to like
yeah.
make Tommen basically say, "Don't be like your brother. Listen to your counsel." Basically.
Yeah, listen to your counsel. The wisest king listens to his counsel till he comes of age, and the wisest of all kings continues to listen to them long after. Well, I mean, what I love is like his where he tries to get Tommen to guess
What a good king
what makes a
needs.
good king, and he mentions like faith, and he says what is his name? I feel
Baylor, Baylor the
Baelor the
Blessed.
Blessed. Yeah,
Yeah.
Baelor the Blessed was holy and pious. He built this septum. He built this septum. And he also named a young boy High Septim because he thought the boy could perform miracles. And he goes through like the whole history of all the crazy rulers they've had and asks, what do they all lack?
And it's true, but it is. It's messed up to say, "Hey, this is a good lesson to learn from a show with decapitations and sex and violence," but it does have some actual lessons. You go like, you could apply this to life, and it actually would turn around. I think you could say the same thing about Breaking Bad, where there's moments where Walt's trying to get Jesse's life back together, and and you say like, "This is really good advice," but it's coming from a guy who's cooking meth on the side and lying to his family 24/7 while getting melting people into smoothies that cross him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those kids like, oh, okay, take writing advice from that. It's like sometimes when I'm in my writing meetup and someone brings up writing advice they heard from a figure who's like kind of problematic, like Neil Gaiman or
Oh
something.
no!
And I'll have to be like, okay, just take his writing advice. Don't take his, love life advice.
Oh goodness,
Sorry, I'm
great.
sorry, I'm
That's
sorry. I
perfect.
shouldn't be
No, it's
laughing.
perfect. I understand.
Yeah.
It's the fact that I know what went there. I'm like, oof. That's a big oof, as
Yeah.
they say. But
Yeah.
oh, thank God, Martin, for all his depravity in his books. He seems just to be a big dorky guy. So I was
Yeah.
hopefully fingers crossed. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx it and say there's not going to be some name in the mud due to some shenanigans with him because
Yeah.
I don't know. Guy's pushing 80, so I don't know.
Yes.
But yeah, so we were going to that scene with Tywin and Tommen is one of my favorite dynamics, and Charles Dance just kills the scenes. In fact, just about every scene
Yeah.
with Tywin is amazing to me. I mean, you first meet him
Yeah.
as he's field dressing a deer, and I believe Charles Dance was actually cutting up and carving up the deer while he was
Because he
talking
actually
to
knew
him.
how to do it from his past life. I think, like not his past life, but like his early life. I think he'd actually learned how to do that. So he was just literally repeating what he already knew how to do, and
And,
yeah, they just let him do it. And
and it gives you the perfect image for what the kind of guy Tywin is. He's over there giving lectures to his son while field dressing a deer, skinning it, and cutting to the point whenever he has to make a point.
yeah,
And also it's can be seen as symbolic too because the House Baratheon's emblem is a stag, and here you have a lion just making food of the stag, but cutting it up and
yeah,
everything. Oh,
yeah, but just to a certain extent, yeah,
I remember I saw a comment and I realized, oh shit, you were going back to what you said about uh, King Baratheon and Ned being a heartbeat, their relationship, their brotherly love, is that someone realized like, oh my god, I just realized Robb Stark was probably named Robb after Ned's best friend,
Oh crap! I didn't even realize that.
and I thought that too when I read it. Like, oh,
Oh,
that's because I love the funny part though. Like this is a great line with the when he's all like, Ned, I need you to become my hand of the king. My lord, you honor me, but I was like, get stand up. I'm not trying to honor you. I want you to run my kingdom while I, hunt, drink, and haul myself into an early grave. I'm like, boy,
yeah,
you have no idea. So I was thinking when I heard that, boy, you have no idea.
yeah.
In fact, that
You have no idea.
Mark Addy as Robert Baratheon is such a presence in the first season that I think he steals the show for the scenes he's in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And for some reason I found it amazing, and I weirdly found it amusing when I found out that I guess he played Fred Flintstone in like the some live action, and I don't know, like something about that was like funny to. Well, I mean, it's funny because I suddenly realized that like if you actually put Fred and Barney, it would kind of work because like I think Bam Bam was supposed to be adopted, and then I realized Bam Bam has white hair, so it's like he's a Targaryen.
That is great. And
Yeah.
oh man, and there's some great tragedies they set up that are going to be like referenced later, like the whole Lyanna Stark thing. The one thing Robert wanted that he could never have because it was taken from him,
Yeah,
and that's
and he
what
gets and I
that.
love that
Yeah,
speech. Yeah,
go on.
I love the conversation between Cersei and
Oh,
Robert
that
that
is
isn't even
such a
in the
great scene.
books,
Yeah,
but
they.
it's actually one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite conversations of like the entire universe. Where she's like, so what was she like? You never asked about her before. Why
Mhm.
not? And then she gives that whole speech about how she at first didn't do it out of like not wanting to like breathe life into Lyanna Stark, and then just didn't want to do it out of spite. But then she realizes what harm could Stark's ghost do to us that we haven't already done to ourselves a million times over. And then he has to give the tragedy of like, I can't remember what she looked like. I just know she was the one thing I wanted. And it's all sad when you realize that like she actually didn't love him back, and I think like Ned even says that like in the first book, or at
Oh
least he
yeah,
has it in like his inner thoughts of like she never loved you the way you loved her,
and even people admit
and
that. Yeah, even if Robert did get her for the rebellion and won, would it have made a difference with his philandering ways and his bastards and everything like that? I mean,
yeah.
I still like that when he told Stark, had your sister not died, we would have been bound by blood.
Yeah. And plenty of people even believe that like Robert probably liked the idea of Lyanna Stark. Like he loved her because it would have bound him and Ned together in blood, and he liked that idea that he kind of just loved Lyanna Stark solely on that basis and not
Hell,
really because of who she was.
and
Yeah.
then on top of that, one of the sad lines is after Ned gets poked by Jamie and Robert forcibly drags him back into being his position of the hand. He mentions how I never got along with my brothers. You were the brother I chose. Like, oh damn.
Yeah. Damn.
And
Yeah,
then
I know.
I think he dies a few episodes after that, but it just the boar that got him is kind of funny to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, that it was a bore of all things, because it's so ignoble, that's why it kind of gets to you, and it's so unexpected. Yeah.
And you don't even see his death on screen. You just see him, after he's been messed up and they're giving him drugged up to stop the pain, and then we're told later, yeah, he kicked it.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of kings that kick it, this is way ahead of the thing, but oh gosh, House of the Dragon has three things that made me like, okay, I'm back locked in because I wasn't turned off by Game of Thrones season 8, but I was like, we are back with Matt Smith as Daemon Targaryen. That guy
Yeah.
is just a force. Like, oh god, like
Yeah.
the guy made Morbius watchable for crying out loud.
Yeah. He's a talented
And
actor, I
then
think. Yeah.
even though I did hear that when he first played a Daemon for the pre time skip numbers, people thought maybe he was a little too old for the role at the time, but he made it work.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
And then Millie Alcock as Rhaenyra, just because I don't know something about like when they call her the Realm's Delight, I believe they're like okay.
Yeah.
Her
She definitely
analysis,
has that.
her analysis
Yeah.
back and forth is such a like oh that you get so
Yeah.
heartbroken when you see it all turn to shit and over a
Yeah.
misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And then of
Or
course
misunderstanding, but admittedly also kind of lying,
yes.
like, because, like Rhaenyra did kind of dig herself into a grave when she chooses to lie about, no longer being a maiden anymore. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that. And then of course, no surprise. I think I've gushed enough about this. Patty Constance as Viserys.
Yeah.
Oh no,
He's
there's
great. Yeah.
there's a fourth thing too. Rhys Ifan as Otto Hightower,
Otto Hightower. Yeah.
who is the closest thing to a Tywin in this series that I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this guy locked in, and he is just every scene he's in is just banger after banger.
Commanding.
Although I did joke that, gosh, I think you can make quite the compilation of him just saying "My grace, your grace" multiple times
My
as the
grace,
series
you'll
goes
grace, you'll grace. Because he just like says it with like such prestigiousness. I mean, it makes sense given who the character is.
on.
He's trying to always come off as a very pristine person, so it makes sense. But still, it's kind of funny.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's were the High Towers already in retreat by the time of after Robert's Rebellion, I think.
I believe so. I'm trying to remember if they're mentioned because I think they're mentioned in the book, in the book for the original Game of Thrones series. I think where they are is mentioned, and I think Marjorie and Loris. I think they're like a quarter high tower or something like that, or they
I
might
know
be like just
they're
half
the
high.
Tyrells, but
Yeah,
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, they're Tyrells, but I think like their mother or something was like high
Oh,
tower or like
I
was
think she
related to
was
the high
Oleana
towers.
Hightower, yeah. Before she was
Yeah,
Oleana Tyrell. And, oh, that's another
yeah.
character, Diana Rigg playing. People say one of the sharpest players of the game, the Queen of Thorns, and she has such a sassy demeanor that works with
Yeah,
her back and forth with her and Tywin and stuff.
I know.
Like the whole
Yeah,
scene
she's
discussing Laura's
yeah.
sword swallower through and through. Like, oh come
So let's
on,
follow it
tell
through and
me,
through.
you never once with all your squires and boys, you never no, so not even once,
She,
just
she, she, I genuinely remember watching that, and like the moment I knew her and Tywin were gonna talk, it almost felt like watch like King Kong versus Godzilla or Freddy versus Jason.
yes,
It's like, oh my god, it's a match for the ages.
and
Because you knew that them talking to each other, being on opposite sides, was always going to be fun, and they did not disappoint.
it's
Yeah,
kind of like whenever every time you see a good chess match between Charles and Magneto, Eric in the comics and movies where they're like just it's nothing too worlds changing, but they're just exchanging ideals, and you're going like, and neither side you can say is at a disadvantage. It's just that you just want to see what this could end in either way. It's the same thing too with Peter Baelish and Lord Varys, and oh, Varys is a character that became like ingrained, and you were like, wow, like I remember that, I know that was Lindsay Ellis's favorite character, so to see him have a fall from grace and due to writing at the last act, where even the
yeah. The
actor
last
himself is
minute.
reading the script reading, and he has a look that he doesn't say it, but his look is like, are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me? This is the best you can think of. Yeah, I know. I remember that, and I remember like poor the Sir Davos's actor, who's
Oh,
Liam
Liam
Cunningham,
Cunningham.
like the face he's even giving, where he just looks. Where I guess you could almost say that he has the parent face of like, I'm not mad. I'm just. Well, granted, with him, he like almost looks like confused. Like, what's going on?
Even Tywin, Charles
Yeah,
Dance said, I tried to keep up with the series after after I was off of it, and I just thought like, what? He was more like what? Like, so Arya's going off on a sail cruise. Everyone's like, he was. It was the whole thing just confused him. He said,
yeah, which I understand. I mean, yeah, exactly.
well, I
But
mean, we'll probably have a whole thing dedicated to the. I mean, there's essay upon essay upon essay about the failings of the last season of Game of Thrones, and where
yeah,
maybe prolonging the series a little longer might have saved it. Maybe a little more tightening. Maybe if the Winds of Winter had already been published, who knows? But I
yeah,
mean, what I'll tell you right now. I started watching Game of Thrones because I think I saw something around season 7, and I thought, okay, I gotta watch the rest of the series, and it was just in time to get ready by the time season 8 was coming out as it was coming out. So I think I
yeah.
binged 3 months worth of because once I started getting into the show, it became easy for me to binge all the seasons.
Yeah, exactly. Because when it just, yeah, it when it gets you, it just gets you hooked. And like, yeah, like Tywin was definitely the first character where I remember I was almost like explicitly watching the show just for him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I liked everything else, but like he was the magnetic presence, him, and then there's so much like intrigue and like yeah, exactly. Sorry,
Yeah. So yeah, and
in,
like
in,
so I remember
intrigue, but
seeing.
there's also like the yeah,
Go on.
sorry,
Sorry.
intrigue, and then also like fantasy. Like I actually feel like now that I've read the books, like I do really respect the magic of Game of Thrones, because like what's interesting is that I kind of feel like the implication, and I've never heard anyone say this, but I feel like it's subtly there, is that magic in Game of Thrones is something that humans aren't supposed to be using, because when people do use it, it always feels like there's something off about it, or there's something that's just like unnatural about it, and it's like always kind of like messed up and disturbing. But I can, maybe that's for, yeah,
Yeah, like with Melisandre, who in the book has a whole thing going on, I believe, and in the movie,
yeah,
I kind of didn't get her deal at first until like I still remember when Sir Bilbo from the prequels showed up to try to poison her, and she drinks the poison in front of him, no problem, and he takes it, and he's
yeah,
bleeding out the eyes and everything, and she's still like, I did nothing.
yeah,
Oh
nothing,
God,
yeah,
oh Stannis Baratheon is a guy that I also got behind the more I watched him.
yeah.
He kind of reminded me of Jason Statham, even though he's not. It's
I can see that, yeah,
Yeah, but the thing about Stannis, other than the memes about him, Stannis the Manus and stuff, is that well, like someone says, he's an interesting guy in that he doesn't want the throne, but he's doing it out of duty. Oh, Stephen Delane, that's the guy, Stephen Delane. and
Yeah.
he plays them as a hard ass of the faith, but also willing to listen to counsel like Davos and stuff. And
Yeah.
the love of his daughter is one of the few times he can actually be tender, where you go, oh, this guy's a hard ass, but he's actually quite interesting. And he says stuff things with such command and presence, like when he's using the blood leeches to try and take out his enemies using blood magic, which they all die coincidentally. Who can say if it was the leeches or not? But the way he
Yeah.
delivers those lines, you can say, okay, I believe you if you think that, yeah, my blood magic ended up removed my enemies.
Yeah. And removing my enemies, and then yeah, and it's always funny how George R. R. Martin likes doing that, of like having some moments where it's like it's unknown if something supernatural is actually happening or if it's just what is it, or it's just coincidence. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of times something that the show didn't do but the books do is like, because like the Iron Chair is supposed to be like much bigger. And in the book, there's this superstition that if you get cut by it, like you get cut by one of the swords, it's the throne like spurring you. But it's also not really clear if like that's actually what's happening, or if it's like it's a throne made of sword. Of course, it's going to cut you, and maybe that has its own deeper symbology. You know, of
Yeah.
like that this whole kingdom and what it's founded on is maybe always going to fail. You know,
Yeah.
and yeah, and like that even plays in like in the books and like Maegor Targaryen's death, where it's like he actually gets his arms cut open and no one knows, like, did he do that himself or did the throne actually come alive briefly and like slice him to pieces somehow?
That reminds me of Beyond Belief. It's like Jonathan Frakes. Did this king really go ahead? Did the throne actually come to life and actually take its vengeance upon them? Or did the king simply clumsy? But how do you account for the way the cuts are vertical? Saying
Yeah,
that, are we saying that, so are we telling the truth? Or are we sitting on a throne of lies?
yeah,
I kind of think Jonathan
exactly.
Frakes is beyond. But my friend
Yeah,
Emily Reese shows a lot of streams, and she loves to show off the Jonathan Frakes episodes of Beyond Belief because they're just it's so funny. The acting and stories and stuff in them sometimes are all over the place, and sometimes you'll see a big name show up, and other times it's just a way to hear Jonathan Frakes deliver the in between lines, and you can tell he gets that shading grin of delivering the pun that's part of the story.
yeah.
Plus, it's just funny with
That's it.
the
Yeah,
random ass compilations of Jonathan Frakes acid things. You ever walked alone in a parking lot at night? You ever do this? You ever
yeah.
like this? But yeah, but oh gosh, but yeah, you're right. The book's never like this was divine intervention, or oh, the guy just being in the whole kingdom thought, okay, yeah, that was divine intervention.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff he does, like especially in like the Fire and Blood books, where like one of the interesting things about that, of course, is that in that book it's supposed to be a book actually written by a maester, and there's so many times where like sometimes even the narratives like diverge to like when it comes to like certain events, and like we're not actually sure what really happened, and maybe it was like a combination of things, maybe it was none of those things. Who can say?
It's a lot like
And
those
that's something.
accounts of the Bible people have about if you treat it as a historical document, like the playing like yes that battle happened, yes this happened, but the whole intervention things like the things that leveled mountains, the Ark of the Covenant, stuff like things like that. Then you go really can we say it? But if you
Yeah,
read it, the Old Testament as a historical account, it's like yeah this guy beget that guy, this happened over here, they crossed this river over there. It's funny when you look at it that
yeah,
way, but then you see the different gospels will have like different accounts of what happened at that same day. Like, did he really feed 5,000? Was it really a divine miracle that you saw? But those who were there wrote it said that's how we see it. So I think that's the same with the accounts in Fire and Blood.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of because it'll actually like sometimes even have like three narrators. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of this whole what really happened. Maybe we'll never know, and that's what kind of makes that book interesting. And that's again sometimes why it's kind of fun, even like going into like old histories and like poorly recounted stuff, because poorly recorded stuff, because it's always interesting finding out, well, how did people come to this conclusion? We'll never know.
Like George R. R. Martin, just this interview after Game of Thrones ended, where he was the series ended, and he's talking with a guy about his thought process, this and that, and he brings up history being full of wonderful stories. And just for the life of me, this one clip stuck out to me where he mentions how look at history, like King Edward II, or fourth one, Edward, deposed by his son in prison and was murdered, supposedly by having a red hot poker thrust up his ass. And then the
Yes,
guy
yeah.
pauses and he goes, "Oh, really? Did we really know that happened or no?" But he's just something
Yeah.
about that delivery of he just. I'm listening to this thing like okay, and then I just hear thrust up his ass come out of nowhere, and I first start laughing because I'm like, "What did he just say that?"
Do you really just say that?
And
Because he
then
seems like such a, yeah.
and then actual English guys who that were taught the history tell us like I know they say yeah that's how we were told it happened, yeah, that the story was yeah that he was
Yeah.
in prison and they thrust a poker down his rectum, which
Yeah.
would have been a painful way to go if you think about it, but yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that does sound like a Game of Thrones
Yeah,
way of
something
going
that would
out.
happen there.
And he,
Yeah,
even in Game of Thrones, he points out how the Lannister wedding is based off, I think, an actual wedding account where like I think they showed like they served a serving dish with like a black boar's head, something like that, to be a signal, and
yeah.
then they had ambushed him,
That
something like that. Yeah.
they ambushed him. Yeah, something like that, and it's stuff that, yeah, he's always pointing to history, and like even sometimes like again when he talks about Tolkien, he brings up this whole idea of like a lot of times, certain people with like good intents, they're always framed as like, the people who make it through. And you have to accept that like real life history isn't always like that. Sometimes there are good intentioned people who try to be leaders that just, aren't meant to be leaders, and bad stuff comes about as a result of that,
The Steward
I
of
mean, because like
Gondor was described as a noble man, but he clearly descended into madness after hearing his eldest son died.
yeah, exactly. And like it's interesting because like, both because like Game of Thrones effectively almost is the story of like what, or it's a meditation on like what does it take to become a good leader, or like, I mean it's a story about like, trying to like seize power and trying to like, but yeah, at the core, like I guess that's the question. What are the qualities of a good leader, And I guess Martin sort of tries to say that it's not simply being a good person. You have to also understand the game. Not that he says that being a good person isn't important. It's just that it's not the only way you get out of there, and it's not the only way you become a good leader.
Like,
There's
look at
tons of, yeah,
Jon Snow when he became Lord Commander.
yeah,
He did something he
exactly. Like
thought was
he,
right, and his whole team thought, "What the hell are you doing, man?" and decided to literally kill him for it.
yeah, exactly. And it's, yeah, you do what's right, and it doesn't always mean that people are going to be on your side, or yeah, what. It's just kind of, and in many respects, I guess that's one of the reasons why it's hard to like be a story that like you can wrap up with a bow. That's probably the reason it's taken Martin so long to finish the other book. And on some level, maybe it's even why the show didn't entirely know what to do with its last seasons.
And then yeah, like, but yeah, like it's just there's going back on part one, like you said, you got Ned trying to do the right honorable thing. They said sparing Cersei humiliation by saying, I know the truth, but before I go tell off everything, just go ahead and fly. And he ends up getting like hell. Even the scene with gosh, I want to go back to other characters I remember from the watch on my rewatch. I ended up really liking
Yeah.
Sir Braun by Jerome Flynn is such an amazing character, and
Yeah.
he's a random guy in a bar, kind of he would definitely be the rogue type character in a D&D session.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
what I love though is, of course, the great moment. That's a great line that just speaks to his characters when they do the trial by combat and he kills the guy representing the Vale, and
Yeah.
Lisa Arwen yells, "You fight with no honor." Like, you're right,
That
he
he
did.
did. Yeah, I
And
know that's what I knew I loved that character was just that line.
yeah,
Yeah,
and oh gosh,
I know he did.
I God, they did a great like when after Game of Thrones 8 ended. When this guy who does great trailer edits did a Hobbs and Shaw style trailer of Jamie and Braun going down, and they edited it
Yeah,
to the trailer of Hobbs and Shaw, and
of
it
Hobbs
just
and Shaw.
works so
Yeah,
well. Where someone says, "God damn, I know this season sucks, but you hyped me enough to want to watch it again just because of this."
yeah, just because they actually did have very good chemistry. When they finally got to work together.
Hmm.
You know, you want you have more skills than anyone in the Lannister army. That's like saying you got a bigger cock than anyone in the Unsullied army.
or like, oh well, you're fucked. Don't you mean we're fucked?
Yeah,
No, I do not.
yeah, fine. No, I do not. Dragons where our partnership ends.
Oh goodness, yeah. Let's talk about that. That's the big
Yeah,
thing people talk about is the dragons. When we finally get to them, like when we first see them, yeah, they're cute little compy-sized hatched ones, and then we know that they're gonna get bigger. So when they actually start getting to become an interesting size, that's when the stakes really go. Like, wow. Like I remember there was this whole tension about Drogon, flying solo, and will he recognize Daenerys still as his mother or something like that?
yeah. There's a lot of tension between them, and that's kind of what, because they're essentially just a weapon, at least as they're portrayed, and they also it's because on some level, like it's amazing how much you can do with them, because on some level they're like pets, but they're also like I said, like they're a weapon, they're also pets, but to Danny, they're also children,
Yeah,
and it
that's
creates,
good.
and it's funny how they're very three-dimensional, despite like, the fact that they're, animals that don't really talk,
I think
and
you could argue that's the same thing with the Titans in the MonsterVerse, where these two are things that
yeah,
don't really emote in the traditional human sense, but they become characters. Like Rodan, you get a personality check just by how he took out those jets. Mothra, you kind of
yeah,
get from her entrances. Ghidorah, you get everything, but he's about just by his postures and stuff. So you get the same vibe from these dragons.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's sorry, now losing my train of thought, but like, yeah, and it's also great, like how, yeah, exactly, like how emotive they can be. And it's also, and it's funny because like on some level there's also like an unknowability about the dragons in Game of Thrones, like even in like Fire and Blood, where like there's this text that's mentions that like, for as much as, even like the maesters, like other people have like studied dragon, there's still a lot they don't understand. And it's interesting because like, again, it goes back to when I was talking about like the magic of Game of Thrones, like the supernatural stuff in Martin's universe is like almost a combination of like Tolkien and Lovecraft, because
Yeah.
like it's very well experienced, but there's also like kind of an unknowability. And like, Martin has even admitted that he's a fan of Lovecraft, and like the dragons, like, again, they're like these pets, they're these weapons, but there's also something about them that's like weirdly unknowable, like we don't know how exactly like they're connected with their writers, because even in like the book Fire and Blood, they say that if there's one thing they know about dragons is that they're not horses, which is that not anyone could ride a dragon. That's when they're like telling stories of like someone trying to jump on a dragon and ride it and, meeting a
Oops.
horrible end or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah, you could definitely tell that. I think that was explored in House of the Dragon too, with
Yeah.
one of the Targaryen kids. I think.
Yeah, he tries. Well, I mean, he tries and he actually does bond with a dragon, but it's like, like later. Well, I mean, in the second season, there's a part where someone tries to jump on a dragon and ride it and it burns him
Oh
alive,
goodness.
and yeah.
Oh, also you gotta love the Valerian stuff is never explored in this series, and it gives you another sense of mystery. Like one
Yeah.
scene I that lives rent free in my head from season 5, I think, is when uh, Mormont, Dr. Isaacs from Resident Evil, Ian Glenn. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was.
England. Yeah.
He's with Tyrion, and they're actually sailing through Old Valeria, and then they just talking about stuff and everything, and all of a sudden they just stop because a dragon we assume to be Drogon is just flying by while Ramin Djawadi's majestic dragon score plays, and then it gets
Yeah.
punctuated by an attack by the Stonemen.
Yeah.
And something about the
I know.
Dragon Skillman, something about the way Glenn delivers "Stonemen, don't let them touch you," just actually makes me start
Yeah.
laughing. I don't know why. Something about it, just because the abruptness
Something
of it.
about just the way, yeah, just the way he delivers it. Yeah.
Yeah, and oh
I know.
oh goodness, oh that's another character, Sir Friendzone, as Lindsay Ellis refers to him.
Yeah.
That's another.
Sir Friendzone. He's a combination of like a wise mentor, but the other problem with him is that he's also kind of grown. Well, I mean, he's technically worse in the books because Danny's younger in the
Ooh,
books,
oh
and he still
goodness.
kind of has that whole wanting to be with her thing, and so it's like, again, it goes like the complexities. Like sometimes George is willing to like go into like the uncomfortable complexities of people, where like sometimes you do learn about this person who was like, very skilled, very knowledgeable, but then they had this one really dirty secret,
Yeah.
I mean, you can name almost most historical figures. I remember there were these guys I used to watch. I think they were called Overly Sarcastic Productions, and they actually talked about how Leonardo da Vinci seems like one of the few people and one of the few big innovators who's like, he's got no dirt on him that we know about yet.
Oh God, don't jinx it.
Yeah, don't jinx it.
Even the founding fathers going back to America. We were taught
Yeah.
about these great standing ideals, and you find out some things and you go, oof, just oof.
Oof.
Jefferson.
Oof. Yo, Jefferson especially. Oh, Jesus.
And then there's other guys like we knew they were jerks, but we still have to like remember them, like Jackson. Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
even before the stuff came out, everyone knew Jackson was a bit of a
Oh, wait,
problem.
wait. Yeah, we knew that. Yeah.
But he's still on the 20.
Yeah, still on $20 bills, but
Yeah, I'm sure Grant probably had a few things where you go like, but then again, he was in
yeah.
Wild Wild West, so maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
He's one of the few good things in that movie. Actually, is that
Yeah.
was it what's his name again? Shit. The actor. He
Chilling
played
us.
Phoebus. He played Phoebus in Calvin Klein. Calvin Klein
Calvin Klein. Yeah.
as both the Doctor and as Grant.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Oh, but
Yeah.
oh god. Somehow we dovetailed back and talking about the giant fucking spider again. Kevin
Yeah.
Smith and the giant spider.
Yeah. So I was watching the movie, I get to the end, and a giant fucking spider shows up.
Okay, like for those of you who don't know, when we're in person, we somehow find a way to weave in the whole John Peters' obsession with the giant spider because don't you know they're a dangerous animal in the insect kingdom? And I'm thinking someone gives you too much fucking
Yeah.
Discovery Channel or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Someone has too much fucking
access
access
to
to the
Discovery
Discovery Channel.
Channel. But oh goodness. Well, okay, we were about oh yeah,
Mormont. Yeah.
Mormont, yeah,
Sir Jorah Mormont. Yeah.
Sir Friend Zone. And oh god,
Yeah.
I loved watching his character arc as the series went on because mostly that's because of Ian Glenn doing such a good job with the character and like
Yeah.
because even in the universe he's mentioned as a problem because his family owned slaves and he was exiled to
Yeah.
Essos because of not willing to like part with it. I think.
Yeah. Well, he was willing to. Well, the thing is, in the I'm trying to remember if this was the show or this was the book. There's some moments where the book caught me off guard with some of its change, with some of its differences. Like Yara actually has a completely different name in the books. Her name is Asha, which like shocked me, but I don't even know why. But yeah, sorry.
And I
But
think
I in
Gendry
the
is Elric Storm something.
Yeah. And okay, yes, but either way, what I was talking about with Jorah, because in the book it said that Jorah actually captured a group of guys and tried to sell them into slavery, and that was the thing that got him in deep shit with Ned Stark. And that's why Ned Stark hates him. And but yeah, he's a very complicated figure. Like he's yeah.
Oh, but I
Among
wonder how many people name their daughters Khaleesi or Dany after the way he describes her in
Yeah,
other
because the way
people's series.
the way he would say it, Khaleesi, blood of my blood. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, he gives a very good performance, and his character, yeah, is very, like I said, he's complicated, like he's very wise, and he knows a lot, he's a very knowledgeable person, but like he's also kind of a weirdo, and like he's yeah.
Well, like even Viserys, God, the shared repeated names are driving me crazy. But even Viserys told him
Yeah.
that he recognized that he sees the ways he looks at his little sister and stuff. Says, "Well, you can have her after you give me back my army or whatever." Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh
God,
yeah.
let's talk about him because he's not in it a whole lot, and he does go out in a memorable way. But it's so funny how this guy is probably chip off the old block from old King Ares with how he's kind of like
Yeah.
Joffrey in a way too when you think about it. The
Yeah,
entitlement
he's
he
sort
has.
of, yeah, he's Joffrey, because in some ways he's like childlike, like you said, like he's like Joffrey has like a childlikeness about him. He has he's very ruthless, but he's in the book he's also very perverted. Well, I mean he's perverted in the show
Either
too. I
way,
mean,
yeah.
like he's perverted, he's entitled, he's violent, and he's also not very willing to learn, like yeah, exactly.
Because
I mean that's what ends up
Mormont
getting him
keeps trying
killed.
to explain to him the whole customs of the Dothraki and stuff. He's thinking like, why would I want to care about
Yeah,
what a bunch of grass feeding shit kickers think and stuff like that? Yeah,
yeah,
because he's like, he only wants them for their power and like, because even the people in
yeah.
Westeros are like, what happens if that Targaryen boy comes back with 1,000 Dothraki screamers
When
behind
the
him?
Dothraki hold at his back, the scum will join him. That's actually what Robert says when they're first talking about it.
Yeah.
Like all he needs, and Ned keeps denying, and Ned keeps brushing him off because it's like the Dothraki don't have ships, but it's like it's also not probably wouldn't be hard for like the Dothraki to just get ships,
Yeah.
and yeah, and Viserys is like, yeah, he's very childlike, he's very in some ways he's like almost. I almost weirdly want. He's almost. I don't know why I'm weirdly gonna say that. Like he's almost frat boyish. I mean, I guess
He
that's sort of
is.
more. Yeah,
Oh no, I mean Bobby B's more frat, but Baratheon's more frat boy for sure.
yeah.
But
Bobby B, and then in House of Dragons, definitely Aegon is
oh,
very
if anything,
frat boy.
Aegon was giving me Viserys vibes. Not
Yeah,
his father Viserys, but the future Viserys. And like I said, I had these repeated
yeah,
names because
yeah. Always reported.
because you're going like, oh, let's talk about Aegon. Like, which Aegon?
Which
'Cause
Aegon?
you got Aegon the Conqueror.
Aegon the I know there's one called Aegon the Unworthy, but I don't know if that's actually the one from House of Dragons. I think that's a different one who shows up later. But there's tons of Aegons. That's
And
the
then
idea.
there's
And
Aegon the Just, I think.
yeah, which kind of makes sense because I think it's like that was sort of Martin again trying to evoke history, where it's like if you look at like I remember us having to read Norse mythological tales, And like sometimes like you would have paragraphs that are just a family line, and you would see like the same name repeat like 20 times, you know.
Oh,
So it's like
I
again,
love
it's
that bit too, where my Julia Glover plays Maester Parcell, and
yeah.
I love the scene where Ned goes to visit him, talking about what the heck was John Arwen working on, and he brings up the whole histories of Westeros birth name book thing, and I love when he starts goes through it and says, like I said, very involved reading. So,
Yeah.
but I love it when he's actually. I love it when Sansa and Arya have a little argument in front of him, and that sets off a light bulb in Ned's head. So he goes through all the birth lines of the Baratheons to realize that okay, the black of hair, we get the one blonde gold crown. He goes, you can see the oh my god hitting his face
Oh my god.
as it's hitting him.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
I
we're
get it.
going back to the Aegon and Viserys. Okay,
Yeah,
he
the series.
is
Yeah.
yes. You gotta admit though, it's you do kind of can't help but pity him in his last moments because he did bring it on himself though when he said he was gonna like cut
Yeah.
out the baby and everything like.
Yeah, cut the baby open. And in the book, it's actually like there's this kind of profound moment where after he says that, the dialogue stops referring to him as Daenerys's brother, and it says the man who Daenerys used to see as a brother, implying that like in her mind she's now detached him from that role because
That's
if he's gonna
why
do something
she's
that heartless. Yeah,
so. That's why she's so like. Even when Mormonts are like, "Don't watch Khaleesi," she's like, "No, she wants to see this happen."
yeah,
And
I want to see. Yeah,
oh, good, yeah, but
the crown for a king. And
oh,
then only at that moment does like he finally start like pleading to Danny, you know, and like in the book he starts saying "sweet sister."
it's like,
I kind of prefer in the
oh,
show where it's in the show it feels a little more naturalistic that he's just like, you know, only at this moment finally scream because he realizes, oh shit, she actually has the power to save my ass, because he's been like the whole time he's been like
deriding her.
enraged at
Yeah,
her,
he's
yeah, deriding
berating
her and
her,
getting
saying
angry anytime it seems like, yeah,
she's just a horse rider slut, that kind of stuff, and like. And because the
yeah,
thing is, I think the backstory goes that he was driven out of Westeros at a very, very young age due to the rebellion and stuff, and the other Targaryens were killed, and he only had just his sister Dany and him, newborn sister. So of course, I guess that'll do a
yeah,
number on you. But I mean, not that it excuses how he was in the end, but
yeah. But like, yeah, he definitely, yeah, they've, yeah, exactly.
but
So,
oh gosh, like I says though, you gotta admit though, I think someone even said, for being a horrible way to die, the show kind of skimped out on molten metal being poured on a person's head. They say he should have been like set on ablaze and everything. It was just from the sheer contact of that temperature it takes for gold to melt and stuff.
yeah,
Oh,
I,
and
I
also he had a
remember.
magical Dothraki belt that melts gold like fast in the
Yeah,
forge.
and I remember someone else pointing out, like, the worst part about this, someone was looking forward to that stew that they were making before they dunk it all out so they could put
Oh
the
yeah,
gold
you're right.
in.
That is the biggest tragedy.
They were looking forward to that all day, and then it's got
Like, damn
wasted.
it,
So,
this upstart had to
yeah,
open his mouth. No
yeah,
stew. We gotta eat the dried horse turkey again.
yeah,
Oh, I found a funny fact on that note. That I remember rewatching this and going like, "Oh, I forgot that happened." Where part of the ritual was to see if it's a boy or a girl instead of a gender reveal exploding firework party. Is let's eat the horse heart and see if if Danny keeps it
yeah.
down or not.
Yeah, I know.
And the thing is that they actually made a giant gelatin gummy bear like prop heart for her to eat because she likes
Yeah,
gummy bears. But it actually made her sick because it was very, very sweet. Plus, the corn syrup for the blood added even more sweetness. So it's like,
yeah. Need more sweetness, so it's
poor
like,
thing.
oh
So
boy, that
when she
poor
almost
thing.
upchucks on screen, that's actually Emilia Clarke's physical reaction. Like,
Real reaction.
but
Yeah,
it works when she keeps it down. You go, oh, there you go. Oh,
yeah,
let's talk about how great Jason Momoa is without even saying much English in this series
yeah,
as Carl Drogo. In fact, I remember for a time he was known as the guy from Atlantis, Stargate Atlantis for a while. But then when Game of Thrones
yeah.
came out, he became known as that's Carl Drogo.
Yeah, that's called Drogo. That's yeah, and yeah, he's very good, and he has like a immediately, again, he's one of those actors who just has a presence, the moment he walks in. Like I always remember the speech he gives,
Oh
when
yeah.
that guy tries to poison Danny, and I remember it because I remember how great that is in the show, and then the book it's kind of weird because he in the book like he just gets off a horse, they tell him what happens, and I guess he just gives that whole speech. While it's just like this awkwardly long bit of text, which was like coming off of the show was like, oh, well, this is lame.
Yeah.
First, like in the show where it's like they make it more dramatic when he's like, around his horde, he's like hyping them up,
And then
like
that's
as he,
why it's
yeah,
so sad when he gets taken out by an infection of all things.
Yeah.
Mighty
My defense,
Warrior.
I remember someone
Yeah.
else, someone pointed that out where they said, Khal Drogo, he's got the skills of Oberyn Martell and Jorah Mormont combined, but he has the immune system of Robin of Aaron.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, but yeah, like I said though, it's because of that was a, and then you had the Blood Witch like two time him in the end anyway.
Yeah, turn him into basically a like mindless, zombie, and then you get the big lesson of like kind of the subversion of the typical trope of like, oh, kindness, brings you anything, when she points out like, my entire village is dead, the people I know are dead, what made you think I was gonna suddenly start viewing you as a friend just because you did this one act of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And then she makes a point of like, look at what life is worth when all else is gone. And then
So
there's, yeah.
that gives Danny the first big lesson, so that she's able to like do that cruel punishment. Where I think Danny did intend. Do you think she did intend to immolate herself, or did she kind of have this knowing that she was gonna be okay in the fire because fire can't kill a dragon?
Possible she sort of had this notion of like, well, I've lost everything, so it can't hurt to try, I guess.
And
Basically like either way, I'll find release. At
but
least
then
like that's kind of
and then she
viewpoint.
comes
Yeah,
out reborn with her dragons, and that's how she gained the title, the Mother of Dragons.
yeah,
And
I know, and
her whole arc is quite fascinating. I mean, I know it ended up
yeah,
a train wreck by the end, but
yeah, but it's a very interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting because like on some level, like even with how it ended, it sort of could have made sense, and it would have made sense because it almost would have been an interesting parallel to Ned's story arc, I
yeah,
would say, where it's like it's the story of someone, because like Ned was about someone who's honorable and can't change, someone very honorable losing their life because because they're in a very dishonorable, setting. And Danny, I feel like could have been an interesting parallel where it's like it's an honorable person who breaks and becomes, malevolent, because they don't know how to. I don't know. Sorry, I hope I'm making
no,
sense, but it's
I get what you're
like,
going with, and yeah,
yeah,
the arc. It's funny when you think about it. Danny's arc is Paul's arc in the
yeah,
Dune books of the whole rising to
yes.
prominence
Oh
and
my God,
stuff.
it actually is. Yeah,
I think
exactly,
down to
and
the a familiar person being the one to have to put him down arc. I think.
yeah,
But
exactly.
still, it's like, and the thing is that, but the thing about Danny is, unlike Paul, even Paul recognizes, yeah, a lot of shit's been done in my name. It's unexcusable. Danny is
Yeah,
because I think because of that childlike wonder of hers that was never brought out of her. She did believe that I am doing the right thing. I'm going to be breaking the wheel that grounds the world and that stuff. And even though
yeah.
she did horrible atrocities to get to that point.
Yeah, she kind of, and like again, it's like when you take into consideration that she is, in the books, like I said, she's younger. She's actually 13 when the first book starts, or like she's a
Oof.
couple days short of turning 14, which like sometimes comes. Yeah, it's kind of funny because sometimes people talk about how I guess Khal Drogo was like portrayed in the book versus the show. Oh, sorry, that was my phone.
Okay.
And sometimes people bring up because in the book, what happens is that Khal Drogo and Danny, when they're first married, they go riding out to a secluded spot, and they both undress, and then there's a part where like Khal Drogo he starts saying no, and he's like letting Danny guide her to like places, to like touch her,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes people say, well, see, that's proof that Khal Drogo wasn't as bad in the book, to which it's like, yeah, but you're still kind of forgetting the fact that Danny's much younger
Yes, in the
in
book.
this moment. So it's like that doesn't really save his name as much as you seem to think it does,
And I like that's not the own you think it is, but I do love
Yeah.
the show showing the dynamic how when you first see it, yes, she does see her as like a brood mare and just just being. It is not tender at all in their love making, and you can see it. But I love it when I've got the name of that other person starts guiding Daenerys in the ways to like see him as an
Pleasure
equal and stuff.
someone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when you see the turnaround happen. You see that's the first time she's taking control of a situation because you think like, oh, she's been out of control. She's just a pawn to be played around. This is just her being useless. So when she decides to finally turn it around on him, that's when you say that's the start of a leader starting to come in. And it's quite almost it'd be almost inspiring if it wasn't we're going towards a crazy route in the end. But
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, and Danny's arc is one that is probably meant to, sort of meant to be messy, but it is again, it's a story about someone who, doesn't have power learning to get it and what becomes of them afterwards, better or for worse, you
Yeah.
know. And yeah,
Oh, and not that brings us to Jon Snow, Kit Harington, and
yeah,
oh God, I know I can never shut up about this, but I love how he had such complex, great speeches, seasons 1 through 6. As after season 8, we get the dialogue choice of Mass Effect. But she is
yeah.
my queen. I don't want it.
She is my queen. Yeah,
I don't
I
want
don't
it.
want it.
And love is the death of duty.
Yeah,
So like someone makes a joke where anyone will throw a quote at John, any quote, like they'll say a line, and they say, "Well, how did he respond?" And then you just show the dialogue wheel from Mass Effect, and the poor guy's only locked up 4
yeah,
arches. And Kit Harington's talented, so that's why you're like, oh,
yeah.
I can tell that's why
Oh man,
he was a little bit like as they were doing the as they were
the
doing
script. Yeah,
the script reading was like, oh, I guess. You know what's funny?
yeah,
He kind of does give me a bit of an Austin St. John meets JDF5 for some reason,
yeah.
and he's
Really?
and he does have that boyish charm that makes sense for him. Where he's got that chip on his shoulder. I mean, he got the whole everyone calling him the Stark Boys, and then he admits where he's just the bastard that Ned picked
Yeah,
up. Where Ned was willing to even sacrifice his own good image with his wife to say, yeah, this was from a tavern slut, when it's actually his
yeah.
sister's love child with
It's
the
just
Targaryen.
yeah,
I remember that big twist, like,
is
oh
that
god, he's actually Aegon Targaryen.
yeah. Aegon the Targaryen, fifth of his name, or something like
Yeah,
yeah,
so he's the fifth. And I do kind of like that his arc didn't end with him, amassing power on the throne in the United Kingdoms, because it does feel antithetical to the road he was building up becoming a man of the Night's Watch. Because in his whole
yeah,
arc is seeing a guy go from being a young man to being the man he's gonna be. Like, just
yeah.
it's
And it's
like
just and it's
he
yeah,
got he.
and I feel like the entire point almost is that it happens despite his royal ties. You know, even if you're thinking of him as like Ned Stark's kid, like he becomes this kind of like inspiring person sort of on his own. You know, and it does feel like if you had him become king because of his ties to the Targaryens, then that would kind of feel like okay, well that
It comes too
whole
easy. Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I think that's the point is he's trying to find his place in this world because, he was all his life he was told he was a bastard without a father. That's why the Jon Snow thing is a thing. And then even though Ned Stark is the best father figure he ever had, it felt like he lived in the shadow of that. So when he ends up going on the watch and doing his own thing and learning lessons and coming back, he becomes someone of an import. Oh, I love the bit where it's poetic to have him be the one to swing a sword for an execution after one of the first things we see is him telling Bram Stark, "Don't look away. Dad will know if you do." Or I think it was
yeah.
Rob. Was it Rob or John who warned him not to look
I think
away?
it's Rob.
Oh,
Well, I mean, it might be John. Sorry.
I don't know, or maybe even
Well, either way,
I know
yeah,
Theon was there too, but yeah, but I like that.
yeah.
Then we see John do it himself when
Janos
Janos
Slint. Yeah,
Slint's pissed off. But it's so funny about how Janos Slint talks about being able to do what is told, but the thing that gets him killed is disobeying orders. I will not do no
yeah,
such thing. Like I have friends in court, powerful friends.
yeah,
But I love that they kept that thing with this lesson of like that the one who gives the sentence must be the one to swing the sword. So
yeah,
like in both cases we see John use his sword as an execution. It has to be with great somberness, but also duty. So like when he has to kill the mutiny, with including guys we've known for a long time like Sir Alistair and even Ollie the Kid, he doesn't
yeah,
flinch. There's a moment where you think,
yeah,
okay, maybe he's not like that kind of guy. Maybe he's gonna back off at the end, and then you see him go for it, but it's not treated as like he's no fuck everyone mentality. You go, he's going off of the lessons that was given to him by Ned and stuff. Ned lives on
yeah,
in Arya and Sansa and John.
and John. Yeah,
I was surprised that one of the direwolves made it out again on rewatch because I thought like I remember the ones that died. Like Lady did not deserve that have that coming just because Arya's
yeah. She
bit
bit Joff.
Joffrey.
Yeah, or is yeah.
And then
What was
Sansa's
her
dog has to
name
be the
again?
one to take it.
Yeah,
And then oh gosh, I'm seeing Hodor again. I'm all like, oh yeah, Hodor. And his whole
yeah,
backstory is tragic when you find out why that ended up being a thing because of an accidental thing by Bram as the Raven.
yeah. Hold the door! Hold the door! Hold door! Hold door! Hold
And you
door!
look
Hold
at
door!
that,
Yeah,
and there's people who say that's it. Fuck Bram Stark forever for that. I'm going. It was an accident, so I can't be too mad at him.
Yeah. But I do think it's meant to demonstrate like how dangerous that power can be. That's sort of, yeah.
Also, well, let's talk about the White Walkers because I remember the whole winter is coming. I do love in the early seasons how they really do build up this otherworldly threat you can't see coming. That I think that's the Lovecraftian influence you explained earlier that coming through.
Yeah, exactly. It's the other worldliness, and it's almost like, again, like the magic and supernatural almost at times feels horror esque. Like, yeah, because even the way the White Walkers are like described, like even in the I haven't finished the second book, but I've gotten to a point where they've gone to Craster's place, and it's been revealed to them that Craster is taking his children and giving them off to the White Walkers to do as they will with them, and
Mm-hmm.
basically turn them into more of their army. And like it is, yeah, he does, like George R. R. Martin kind of does know how to write a very creepy scene and a creepy allusions to something supernatural. And yeah, in the first few seasons, they're a very Lovecraftian sort of presence and a very dooming presence. And like, I think the reason Martin kind of goes for this is like, there's this idea that like everyone in Westeros is like fighting for power, fighting for political power. And then there's these magical elements that almost seem like they could smash all this apart, and all your political scheming basically will come to naught because you'll be destroyed,
Yeah,
by something other. Yeah,
it's like fighting for what's left of the land of the world when the sun's about to explode, and it doesn't.
exactly.
Oops, that's too
Oh,
bad.
sorry,
Amber
that's on my
Alert.
phone. Oh boy.
Is it a silver alert?
I 17,
Oops, I got it too. Hold on.
17. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see it. Yep. Okay. Uh,
Okay.
Paul, sorry for that, folks. But
That's okay.
goodness, yeah, like I said, there was something about I loved seeing the nursemaids talk to Bran about the stories of what the last winter was like, or
Yeah,
Sir
but the last winter
Alistair,
was like
or Sir Alistair.
kings froze to death in their castles, same as the shepherds in their huts. It's like, again, like the supernatural stuff in like Martin's universe is like, again, it's like almost, it can easily crush everything. And that's maybe the point, like it's subtly this idea of like all this stuff doesn't matter in the grand scheme of the universe. And like it's the question of like, because like obviously the question he kind of asks is like, will everyone see it? Will everyone see that in time, that none of this stuff is going to matter if the White Walkers invade? At least that was the point of like the first couple of seasons of the show, and even the books. It's like,
Even
is any of this stuff going to matter in the end?
in
Yeah.
House of the Dragon, Viserys' whole secret to Rhaenyra is the Song of Ice and Fire about how one day someone will be born of noble blood to like stop a great catastrophe happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, that whole deal, like I said, but I loved how for a long time, I remember one time, once it finally happened, where the posters and ads and magazine ads where the whole winter is here showing the Night King's blue eyes and dark. Like, there's something kind of metal about that.
Yeah.
And then
I see it.
the whole famous Hard Home episode where they do take out a lot of walkers, and then they're on the boat, and then they see the Night King there, and he does that little arm race thing, and everyone that they just killed. It's kind of like that scene in End of Ava where Asuka just killed all the mass-produced Avas, but then when she runs out of power, and then they find out that the other ones are still active, you're like, oh shit, that's the same
Oh
feeling when
shit.
when
Yeah.
the Night
Let's
King.
say it's the like, yeah, technically it's worse there because like with Asuka's, or maybe it's like better because like in Asuka's, at least they're going to attack immediately, versus like when it's in Hard Home and you're seeing all those buys being raised. That's when you realize, oh shit, this is how bad this actually is going to be for us. That's how bad this problem.
Which
Yeah.
is why I think everyone was so let down by what's wrong with them? The controller ship has been destroyed. Look,
Yeah.
they are broken. That's that's what happened to the Night
That's
Walkers.
what-
7 seasons of threat building, only for one poke to pop them all like water balloons.
Yeah.
It would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic, but I'm laughing anyway. But
Yeah.
Jesus, when you put it that way,
Yeah.
Viserys, you had your daughter ruin her friendship with her best friend over a water balloon.
Yeah.
Okay,
I know. Yeah.
that's a stupid way to look at it, but it's kind of funny if you
Right.
look at it from that angle.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
It's fun.
me being an Arya fan, I didn't mind that she was the one to put the blow. But
Yeah, I
it is funny though that all it took was a Valyrian steel blade to take out the king in a way that it was one of those kill the queen, kill the whole hive things.
yeah, kill the whole hive. The one goes down, and it's like the main network goes down, then all the drones, yeah, turn off, and like it's not like it doesn't like entirely like not make sense, but it is understandable why people. I sort of feel like if they had at the very least let the White Walker like the whole fight against them be like a 2-part thing. I mean, I get they already had like it was already like a 90-minute
Oh,
episode, but still,
infamously,
you know,
the lighting was such a big point of contention in that episode.
yeah, people couldn't even tell someone had died. I mean, like I remember watching a video of people reacting to that episode, and there's so many times where it's like, did Brienne just die? Did that? Okay, no, that's her. Okay,
And I
are
think,
they dead? I don't
I'm just going. I guess AVPR trained me on this, but do people not know how to adjust their TVs?
adjust the brightness on their TVs. I guess not. You
I
know,
understand in the recent home releases they've actually touched up the picture to not be as dark as
as
broadcasted,
dim as
but I didn't see the problem. I think the
I mean, me neither. Like
what
I personally saw what was going on. You know, I knew who was dying and who was
I
yeah,
mean, we gotta
who
admit,
wasn't.
one great scene is we heard about the legendary the Dothraki hordes. You see a bunch of them marching into a night, and when you see all those torches just slowly go out, you don't even see the struggle, but just having this full force that you know they're badasses, riding out that way and then just go snuff out. You're like, even you're going, oh shit, are they going to make it
Oh
out of
shit,
this?
we're in bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're in a
like,
bad place. Yeah,
oh, and you gotta admit, oh, one aspect of this series that I think helped carry it is Ramin Djawadi's fantastic musical score that is adventurous, ethereal, haunting, terrifying, all these things it needs to be to punctuate the right moments.
yeah, exactly. For all the problems Game of Thrones has ever perceived as having is hit, even in the last season, like even when you see like Danny approaching the throne, like the music they play there is like just beautiful,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
and hell, someone said this, man.
chest kiss.
They said you could tell Ramen really loved Danny because he gave her some of the most ethereal music, like like going back to the end of season one where she's reborn from the ashes, and you hear the first cry of a dragon. They played this very beautiful choir as that becomes her theme that throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah,
And that goes back to that scene I mentioned earlier with Valeria and then Drogon flying by. You hear that beautiful Targaryen motif play as the dragon flies by, and even Tyrion and Majora are like they realize they
oh
witnessed
my
something.
god,
They will witness something special. It's not like oh shit, here comes a dragon. It's like this is
yeah.
going to be so stupid. This is like Dr. Grant pointing at the Brachiosaur, going,
Yeah,
"It's a dinosaur."
it's a dinosaur. Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. I agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Ooh, Sam Neill in Game of Thrones would have been something. I don't know why. I don't know who he played, but
yeah.
I'm just imagining it. I love the idea.
Like in the like Fire and Blood. Like I mean, I guess they're gonna do a movie about Aegon's conquest. That's something I'm hearing, but
Oh,
I also am
I
not
think
really sure if
it's
this
been
is
confirmed,
confirmed. Oh,
and
it's confirmed.
it's
Okay.
coming next year.
I yeah, I don't know who you'll be. He maybe he could be like the guy who what is that place called? The guy who built Heron Hall. Oh, Heron the Black. Maybe it could be him. I mean, that would
And the
be he
joke
gets
is that
fried, but you know,
Heron Hall is just cursed because bad things
yeah.
happen to guys who inherit Heron Hall.
Yeah, maybe he could be the first person. He could be the guy who built it and the guy who, like, you know, enjoys the safety of it till Aegon, you know, burns it. Yeah, Aegon burns it to a crisp, and him and his sons roast alive. Maybe Sam Neill could be him. I don't
I don't
know.
know, but there's a lot of great, like I mentioned, who's who. You got like Max von Sydow, Dillian Glover, Charles Dance, all these great, I mean, Pedro Pascal got a resurgence off of this one.
Yeah, you got to research because at this point, like, this was his first like big role, right? Because other up until this point, he'd only been like a minor character on. Well, I mean, he technically was a minor character here too, but this was his first like starring role, and he got yeah,
I mean, the joke about him facing head trauma has become a running joke. But the reason he
yeah,
doesn't take off his mask as the Mandalorian is not because of the Mandalorian code, it's because he knows what will happen when he takes it off.
yeah. You could at least wear a helmet. And I don't remember what his comment. Well, he doesn't make a comment.
You
Sorry,
know
instead
what's
he says you
sad?
really shouldn't drink.
Yeah,
What?
you know what's sad is that he had that fight in the bag. He had
Yeah,
it, but no, he had
he
to
had it in the bag, but you know his problem is that at the last moment
confess.
he sees. And I know it's different in the books. It's kind of interesting in the books because like what happens is that again it in the books the mountain I guess is like freakishly huge, and what happens is that like he breaks off his spear and then he actually tries to grab the mountain sword and like it's not know what he's gonna do like but it's like oh well like he's gonna go for like the romantic ending of like he kills the mountain with his own blade, you know.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is that he doesn't realize if I pick up the big sword, he took away his one advantage that he's had the whole fight, and that's what ends up getting him killed. And then in like the show, it's kind of more he finally sees the one chance he can get to get someone to confirm that it was Tywin Lannister who gave the order, and that basically overrules his common sense.
Uh-huh. And oh, you got it's funny is that for as violent as the show is, even the show takes a moment to cut away from the actual, head burst, but just everyone's
Yeah, a big
horrified
Edverse.
reactions is enough for you to be like, you know how
Yeah,
it shows
it's always funny when you see people's reaction to that because I've seen tons of reaction videos to that, and it's I mean I feel bad because I don't know if I'm a sadist for finding this funny, but it is funny like sometimes when you see like people because like I only once have I actually seen someone kind of get into where they think that scene is going when they're showing him walking around because like she's actually sitting there and she's like saying and the audio's off because it's one of those like collage things where they're
yeah.
showing a bunch of people's different reactions, but you can actually see her going like Tywin, like she's almost like excited, like waiting for the mountain to confess that it was Tywin, and
Oh, she
it's
has
like,
no idea.
oh, you poor little, oh, you poor little angel, and then like in a sick way, it almost is satisfying when you see him get snatched off his feet. You see her raving excitement go to pure terror, you know?
Yeah, it is. It does take you off guard when it happens because you go like, okay, because in any hero story, Oberon Martell would have been the dashing rogue. This would have been his his moment of triumph.
Yeah, his moment of triumph, and it, the idea being that like, but again, it kind of it goes into the themes of like, what does it take to lose, and like technically it raises the stakes because it shows that not only can good guys lose, they good guys can even lose a victory they've secured, and that's a moment that no one's safe. Yeah.
Same thing happened with Rob when he had allyship everywhere, but he decided to say, fuck the phrase and and
Yeah,
went for his
fuck the
own way.
phrase and marry somebody else and doesn't take into consideration what's going to happen as a result of that,
Well, hell,
and he kind of,
that Tully guy who told him like you'll never be king of the North afterwards, like yeah, he's
yeah,
that's when he really lost the war, not the Red Wedding. It was when he started to lose support
yeah,
that way.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, of the Martell death, I remember thinking it reminds me of that scene in Into Darkness when Peter Weller gets killed by Benedict Cumberbatch. And that
Yeah,
too had them just have you don't see the outcome, but everyone's oh shit reaction makes you go, okay, it
yeah.
was bad.
Okay, that was not pretty. Yeah.
Whatever you put in here will always be worse than any actual Jason
Yeah, and then any
impersonator
actual
thing.
visual, yeah, any visual they could have shown. Yeah.
But I did laugh because that makes me think of those React videos of people watching Pulp Fiction for the first time and not expecting John Travolta's pistol to go off on Phil Lamar, Marvin.
Yeah.
And there's actually someone
I
already
shot
knew.
Marvin in the face. Why the fuck did you do
Everyone
that?
already knew because people you can tell who owned a gun from the reactor. Because the minute I heard someone even say, "No, no, don't do that," when he showed up with this already on the trigger while explaining the whole thing, because they already knew that he said you can tell who owns a gun by the people who instantly flinched the minute he turned around with his finger already on the trigger, saying poor trigger discipline.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, oh goodness, yeah, the Red Wedding I'm sure had a lot of funny oh shit reactions too, but
Yeah.
uh,
Well, the red wedding, it's interesting because like a lot of times, there's this one group of reactors. I don't remember their names, but like there's one guy in the group who always takes everything the worst. Like because like during the red wedding, like he actually starts like going like oh, like he actually has to like cover his
so he
mouth,
won't scream.
and then like yeah. And then there's this other poor reactor who, they see one of the Freys pull out a knife. And they're like, oh, and he's clearly just about to say, oh shit, until he sees that he's going for Una Chaplin, and he's like,
Ooh.
oh shit. Yeah. And then there's that one admittedly can be kind of sad because like there's some people who like start crying, it's like, oh, like you want to
Yeah,
give them a hug,
but yeah,
versus like,
it is
yeah,
a moment where because uh, Richard Madden is amazing as Rob Stark. I think when I saw him as a potential name for potential Bonds, I'm all like, yeah, make Richard Madden
yeah,
Bond. He
yeah, I
gives
can
me
see
that
that.
Lazenby vibe. He
Yeah, I
has
see it.
that boyish charm and playfulness to make a quip after someone's got their head in a paper press, but also that kind of tragedy that Bond needs to have, but also can turn into that killer edge that Bond needs to have.
Yeah, I see it.
Ultimately, I think he ended up doing Man from Uncle instead, so that's the closest we're going to get to Richard Madden as
Yeah, him as
Bond.
well. Yeah.
But I loved him as Rob Stark, and I love when he would get emotional, like when he heard that Ned was killed, and he's venting the frustrations the audience is having with losing Sean Bean.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah,
Oh,
that's sweet moment where, Caitlin gives him a hug, and then you get like that sad moment where it's like, they're back at the Winterfell and like Rickon is at it. Yeah, like he's in the crypts because he thinks he had that dream where Ned led him there. And yeah.
oh God, I'm still thinking of that hilarious moment in the Hobbs and Shaw trailer where they make fun of that moment with meeting the Tarleys and there, oh look, there's Rickon, no, Dickon, and you have
Dickon.
uh, yeah,
Yeah,
Braun
and
just
for
laughing.
Braun. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was a great moment too. That whole battle in the open plains with the Thrakis
Yeah.
versus the Lannisters and the other.
Yeah.
Were those the armies reinforced by the Iron Bank of Bravos or?
I think so. Yeah. Well, it was the Lannister army. Yeah. And them. And yeah, and that's the first time Jamie and Braun ever see a dragon,
And we're
and there's this
thinking,
sense of their world just got turned upside down.
well, that's like being in the middle. Okay, I would love a movie that would do this one day. Make it be played as a straight, World War II film between the Japanese and the Americans, like just straight up, and then Godzilla comes out of the water to ruin the Battle of Midway or something like that.
Yeah, I like that. That was actually an idea I remember having of like, if they ever did new Godzilla movies, of like just having a scene where it's like two armies are fighting each other, and then suddenly, you hearing something off in the distance, and then Godzilla rises from the
Yeah,
water, and then both armies are like, some of them are trying to retreat, some of them are trying to team up and fight them together, but it's like just a messy situation. You just have the one protagonist running through. Yeah, that'd be
yeah.
cool.
Minus one kind of comes close to getting that vibe.
Yeah, it does.
But oh yeah, but let's see. You're right. That is, oh wait, I want to go back to this. Like I know we're all over the place. That's the whole point of this. But one thing I remember
Yeah,
loving, a scene they had to make up just because the episode was too short was the whole um, King Robert talking about the past battles with Barrister Selmy,
yeah.
and that one line is quotable. About him killing a Tarly boy, holding his hands, going, "Wait, wait! They don't tell you that part. They don't tell you how they shit themselves in the end. They don't tell you that part in the songs."
Yeah. They'll tell you the ideal. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
great line.
Oh yeah, and I
Men
love
shit
that.
themselves when they die. Didn't they teach you that at fancy lad school? That's what Braun says to Dickon when he comes up to him. And he's like, I didn't expect the smell. Yeah.
Oh, and also I love that bit too when he's mentioned. I love how everyone in the whole kingdom has respects for Barrister Selmy, because
Yeah.
I love you when Jamie's talking to him and you go like, "Oh, he mentions how Jamie has a good fight." He says, "I saw you at this battle where you like did the guy with the reverse quarter, best move I ever saw." And I love how, and that's why people get so sad because in the books, Barrister Selmy hasn't died yet, but I think they had to have him get taken out by 20 ninja assassins.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was something like even he pushed against, like even the actor pushed against, and supposedly even like wrote letters trying to say, no, no, wait, keep me alive because of this, or that,
If
that.
you could have
But
him
they
get
kind of just,
jumped, but you don't have to show him explicitly, die.
yeah, die. But they wanted a shock death, and that was kind of that was kind of when they started doing stuff for shock value and not necessarily because it was the good of this for the good of the story,
That's where some of the
and
problems happen. But I think Barrister Selmy, if he was
yeah,
gonna die, he probably should have died either fighting a bunch of Dothraki during the whole. No, he had already turned against the Seven Realms at that point, so he would have been
yeah,
fighting on
he'd already
Dany's
turned
side.
against them, but
Oh, you could have
yeah,
killed him during the Right Walker reign, or killed him during the as a collateral damage during the Danny going crazy part.
yeah,
That would
that
have
could have
bought
worked.
that.
Yeah,
Oh, but going back to the music again, the I loved one. There's some of the best moments where he does this thing with a somber piano that builds up to a crescendo, something where it's like a big moment. The Night King song that plays when the tide is turning for the worse.
yeah,
Is such a great song, and it starts becoming hopeful near the end. We think, okay, this is where it's all coming down to this, and that's when Arya's jump happens. And then in a
yeah,
similar vein is I think it's called Seven Lights, or it's the song
yeah. Lance Seven.
when Cersei blows up the Sept of Baelor.
Oh yeah, that's a great motif. Yeah, I mean that's a great scene in general, because it's
It's
like the whole time, like the whole time, like you're almost getting beaten down by like how hopeless this situation is. That in a weird way, you're almost cheering for Cersei in that moment, even though you're forgetting. Oh right, she's also gonna blow up Marjorie, But
yeah.
it's
Oh,
like you
there's
understand all the shit she's gone through, and it's like, hey, yeah, you kind of want. Well, I mean, you also have that earlier when like the faith militant comes to her house and it comes to the red keep and try to take her away to talk to the septon, and she's they say move your man aside or there'll be violence. Then she has the epic line of I choose violence, and then she sets the mountain upon them and he tears off one of their heads,
I
and then has
think
that
that's where
epic line of yeah,
that line of person woke up that day and chose violence. I think that's where that comes from. I think how that's a running
yeah, I
meme.
think so. Yeah, I know. I know my sister had that line, and I even was like trying to point that out because like she used to watch Game of Thrones, but she really doesn't seem to remember much of it. I think she was like watch it because she liked Jon Snow or something.
That makes sense. Oh, but
But yeah, I remember.
and then one of
Yeah,
my favorite songs of all time is the Lannister motif that became the Reigns of Castamere. In fact, like I says, I remember when I first heard it was during the Red Wedding song. and they started playing it, and then I'm like, I like how Kate knew her history enough to know. Oh God, this is a Lannister trap. Once the wedding guest started playing
Yeah.
the Rant to Castamere. Oh, and then that was referenced earlier
Yeah.
in season two
Exactly.
when before the battle of the Blackwater when Bronn's drunkenly singing the Lannister song, and then guy, where did you learn Lannister songs from?
Yeah.
and then
Yeah. Exactly. That's a great. Yeah.
and then oh goodness,
Da-na,
yeah.
da-na,
In
da-na,
fact,
da-na.
that's why I'm
Yeah.
going like it hasn't appeared in House of the Dragon yet because I don't think the Lannisters are that big of a force yet.
Yeah, well, I think if I recall, that music specifically refers to Tywin, or it refers to like a battle that he won at some point
Oh
in
yeah,
his
where
history.
he
So
completely ended that line. That's why they say the rain sweep over our halls, and people like.
yeah,
In fact, I heard a story from the books that they said that was great, where there was a great conflict about to begin between another powerful house and everything like that, and Tywin only sent a single messenger, okay, and that single messenger just started to play the Reigns of Castamere, and that's when that lord decided, you know what, never mind. Like the story, the legend of that story was enough for even other people to say, let's not mess with the Lannisters.
yeah, exactly.
So when a song can do that for you, you're like, damn.
Yeah, damn.
But
When people know it's the power of a symbol, which is what Tywin's character is all about. It's about the the importance of an image, and how having an image and a legacy like that can give you strength and power, and
yeah, that's why he got
among
so
people that are,
so mad about the story of Jamie and Cersei having a fling.
yeah,
Oh, Jamie's arc with Brienne is such it's almost like a 9 out of 10 line before doing a complete 180 in the last
yeah.
episode where I'm like,
Oh,
goodness,
you
like
bastard. I remember someone made a joke about in the last episode when they're showing Brienne about to write in the Book of Brothers. And, some people are saying, right, that it was like this reaction compilation, and you heard a bunch of different perspectives. One of them said, right, that he was a great man. And then the next one that said, he hit it, then quit it. Jerk.
that's a very good one.
Yeah.
But oh,
But yeah,
Brienne was
yeah.
another reason I wanted to watch the series because I knew she was Captain Phasma. So when I heard that Gwendolyn Christie got a big start as Brienne of Tarth, I was like, that's really great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she's a very interesting character. Sorry. Yeah. And she's a very, yeah. Yeah. And she's a very interesting character because like yeah, she lives. Uh, she, yeah, yeah, Brienne of Tarth. She's one of those characters like works because she skirts the line between being sweet and also being like a badass. And like because she's very loyal to like Renly and to like Catelyn Stark, and she almost has like, even though she's like big and strong, she has a very underdog feel. I mean, for obvious reasons, because she's, yeah,
And the Hound's another character where you think, oh, big scary guy with a burn mark, and just he's the Hound. They call him that because he's the dog at the beck and call of the crown. But he's much more complex
yeah,
than that, especially when that whole Arya and him bond happens. Like you start rooting for that.
yeah, rooting for them and rooting for him because because he's like a comic relief character, but he doesn't like overstay his welcome or become or go too far. And he's honestly pretty interesting in my eyes through the entire, even when we're going through the whole Clegane Bowl, which is kind of a little out of left field and not entirely necessary, but like maybe it's just the case of that actor just did a good enough job that like I can still,
I'm excited for him to be Balin Skull
Balin Skull.
in
Yeah,
Ahsoka to replace the late Ray Stevens.
yeah,
And I mean,
me too.
there's just too many great characters that make you laugh, like Janos Slint, Sir Maren Trent. I mean, we
Yeah,
we talked about Tyrion and his wit.
Aaron Trot. Yeah, the greatest sword fighter of all time, killed by Marin fucking Trot. Any boy with a sword could kill 3 Marin Trots. Because that's him constantly criticizing Sirio and like Arya's idealized view of him. You know,
Oh,
he didn't have his sword at the time. The greatest sword fighter of all time didn't have his sword.
and then
Yeah,
also oh god, that made me think of there's another guy that's just like that. Ilan Payne. No, that's the executioner.
yeah.
There
Dylan
was
Payne.
well, Loras is so funny. Him and Remy Baratheon, which I think that might have been one of the first times I've ever seen an implied BJ on a guy from a guy. And I went like, because that's
Yeah,
and talk about. You hear the kisses, and you start hearing Golard, and you see Remy go, and you realizing, oh, so that's what Marjorie meant by sword swallower later.
yeah,
And oh gosh, oh the Stannis Baratheon, Davos Seaworth. It's just God. That
yeah,
I was glad he was one of the guys to make it to the very end.
yeah. Me too.
Oh, it was
He was
Tyrion.
very interesting.
It was a Tyrion line I just remembered that made me laugh. That had to do with characters like that. Um, shit. Now it's eluding me. It was a Tyrion line. Oh, I loved his whole confession at the Vale about confessing for his crimes, about all the bad things he's done throughout his years. I made the bald man cry, all that stuff. And the running
Yeah,
joke about the whole one time I went to a brothel with a honeycomb and a jackass, and
yeah,
both every time he's tried to tell that parable, it always ends up getting cut off by an attack or someone saying shut up or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. Or just a cut to the next scene. Yeah,
Oh gosh, but yeah, and fans have speculated what is the punchline for that one, and
yeah,
it made me laugh. Apparently, it has to do with a fan's interpretation. It has to do with the genie, where his maid left. A guy, a dwarf, goes into a brothel with a honeycomb and a donkey, jackass, and he says, "Well, what happened? My lady, I need some company because my lady left me." And it said that, what happened? Well, we found a genie, and she had wished for the finest ass, which explains the donkey, and a house
yeah,
fit for a queen, which explains the honeycomb.
yeah.
And she goes, and then what happened? Well, then she'll say, then she wished for me to have my cock hang beneath my knees. What's wrong with that? I used to be 6 foot. No, no, that doesn't sound so bad. Easy for you to say. I was 6'3".
Yeah.
That's the that's the joke that people think no one has ever come out to say that's not it or that. But for now, yeah, I think it's good enough headcanon to laugh at.
Yeah. And that sounds like something he'd say, like Tyrion was. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, yeah, Tallman. There was Jaffrey. There was I mean, Oberyn Martell
Yeah.
was charming up until his end. I love the whole bit when they're doing the testimony, and we remember an earlier season where Tyrion gets that what was the name of the lady that he slept with that ended up going with Tywin?
Oh, what is her name? Why can't I remember her name? Damn it. I can look that up. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna see it and go like that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, no, no, that's not.
I think just the yeah. Tyrion trial. There is the
Shay.
Shay. That's it. Yeah. See
Shay, that's her name.
that whole
Yeah.
bit when he's explaining. He wanted me to fuck him like it's the end of the world. And did you? Well, we're on what? Did you fuck him like it was the end of the world?
Like
With
it was
that
the end of the world.
that accent of his.
Yeah.
Gosh, and oh yeah, the didn't the lady who played one of the his sister and went on to play that Imperial that helped Kenobi and in Kenobi?
Yeah. That wasn't his sister. That was his lover,
Yeah.
his paramour. Yeah.
Uh huh.
But yes, she did.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because I know his wife is the one
Ilaria's son.
that was
Yeah.
killed by
Ilar.
his wife was killed by the mountain. Yeah.
No, no, no. His sister was killed by the mountain. His wife was who was with him to when he was fighting the mountain.
Oof. Yeah. And then
We're
there
talking
was
about Oberyn, right? Yeah.
yeah. And then another Star Wars Game of Thrones alumni, Jess Pavel was played by Jessica Henwick, who was one of the Sand Snakes.
Yeah.
Oh!
I know.
I just reminded myself of this
And then
asshole.
she was also yeah.
You're
And
on
then
Gay.
another one was
No, not
Greyjoy. Yeah.
not Euron Greyjoy. The brother of Balor Greyjoy. Euron's on board.
Yeah. Yeah. You're on. Okay. No, no, no. Theon
No,
Greyjoy. Is that who you mean? Sorry.
Theon is
Theon
Joffrey Woodard,
Greyjoy.
and Euron is the guy with cheat codes on the entire time.
Yeah.
What's
Exactly.
funny is he almost I feel like they wanted to go for like a Leaf Shriver or a Sabretooth type vibe with the guy. He's
Yeah.
kind of Kano-ish too, because I guess you hear about the Greyjoys
Yeah.
being these great pirates and stuff, and he kind of almost fits the mold. But his look isn't quite there to really sell that. He looks like, motorcycle punk rocker meets pirate, and it doesn't quite
Yeah,
sell it
exactly.
for me. And I get why he is the way he is, and why he's supposed to be like the one ace up Cersei's sleeve. But at one time you're going like, come on, man, you're just cheating at this point.
Yeah, you're just cheating, and like yeah,
That's why it was
it's a
satisfying
good.
when Jamie finally takes him out in the battle.
Yeah, exactly. He's the kind of guy who like rolls constantly lucky dice, like some on a D&D game,
But to an obnoxious degree.
Yeah.
Oh God! Speaking of Theon, I love that speech he gives when he's head of Winterfell, and I love how he mentions
Yeah.
that one thing. There's a guy playing horn, and the first guy to get it would be the one who kills whoever's blowing that fucking horn.
On. Women will scream our names as they
Yeah, as
scream
with
our
their
names as
boyfriend,
they,
with their lovers
yeah,
in them. And
they sleep with their lovers. Aye, and then he gets knocked out.
I was
Yeah.
like, finally, oh, that was a good speech.
Yeah.
Oh, Theon goes through the worst of it. Just
Yeah, he
his
does.
humiliation is just absolute.
Yeah, at first he's like, a kind of he's sort of a wimp, and then by the end you're like kind of feeling sorry for him, and then like it's almost like I remember actually feeling like joy when it's like he's getting into that fight with someone and they try to kick him in the balls, but then because he doesn't have anything there anymore, he instantly starts fighting back, and it was kind of sad, but it was almost like, oh yeah, Theon,
You gotta get a win at least, and then
yeah,
Ramsay Bolton, Ramsay Snow is like evil Samwise Gamgee, Frodo Baggins type guy,
yeah, exactly.
and but I do. He does have one of the best lines in the whole series. If you think the story has a happy ending, you really haven't been paying
I've been
attention.
paying attention. Yeah. And like
Oh,
again, it's interesting because like he's a sick, scary. I'll admit he kind of the thing with me is like he was when I first watched the show, he was the death I feel like I was kind of waiting for because like he was just because like the thing with me is I actually didn't know anything about him, because I knew everything about Joffrey. So like the whole time I was watching Joffrey, it's like, well, I mean, with Joffrey, I already knew he was gonna die versus like Ramsey Snow, which I actually didn't know a whole lot about. Like even with like Lindsay Ellis's video, like he gets kind of skimmed over a little bit, but like so I didn't know anything about him. And then like there were times where like he would like genuinely kind of disturb the hell out of me, and I was like, oh god, please kill this guy, please
yeah, and
kill
then
this guy off as
that's
soon as.
a. According to the filming scenes on Letterman, he was explaining that the scene when he gets blood in his mouth against fighting Kit Harington was actually him getting a real punch from Kit and still playing into it with the sadistic laughing and everything like that.
Yeah,
Which makes me
that's
think of
funny.
Willem Dafoe getting the multiple punches in No Way Home and just still laughing it off. Oh,
Yeah,
but going wait, I got way off topic when I want to talk about back
sorry.
to
Oh,
the stories about what happened, and then Barrister Selmy talks about his first story, and then Rob. When people say it's ironic that Robert can't remember Lyanna Stark, but he can remember when he smashed some Tarly boy on the chest and broke every rib in his body with his mighty hammer. God, that was
yeah,
strong. Which every
yeah,
comment for old clips is, God, the dialogue was strong back then.
yeah. I know.
And then
90% of stuff. Yeah,
oh goodness, but again the part I love is when he's trying to mock Jamie Kingslayer, get in here. And he's explaining the whole how does it feel being a glorified watchdog while your king, shits and fucks and fights,
yeah.
I love when he tells him the whole
Yes.
like, what do you remember yours? Yes, it was some guy outlaw at the battle of this, and he goes, oh well, any last words from him? Oh, not really. I cut his head off.
Yeah.
What about the Mad King? Any last words? Any
Yeah.
silent reprieve? Any pleading? Oh, he said the same thing he's been saying for hours.
Yeah.
I love the look on their faces when Jamie tells them burn them all. And when you find out about the
Yeah.
dragon fire later, that's buried underneath the city, you go, "Oh shit, Jamie!
Shit.
Jamie may have sullied his honor and everything by killing his own king, but god damn, did he save everybody?" But that's
Yeah.
another great scene is the whole trial of Tyrion, and when he finally gets pissed off and wants to confess about the crime of being an imp, and you're not on
Yeah.
trial for being an imp.
For being an imp. Oh, but I have. My whole life I've been on trial for that. I saved this city and all your worthless lives. I should have let Stannis kill you all.
Yeah, they did
And it's
not.
like again, it's just the motion, yeah, that makes that so yeah.
Oh goodness, and I know we kind of skimmed over him, but I did like Varys too, because one of the best scenes
Me too.
ever is anytime Varys and Littlefinger are having conversations about what just happened. And so there's a part when it gives you the impression of two guys who are really moving the board but are so unassuming that no one would ever suspect them.
Yeah,
Like you
because
got
neither of them has like clear goals. Like even the evil Littlefinger once has that line of like I've never been one to trust eunuchs. Who knows what they want, you know? And then I remember even that one line from Varys when Oberyn Martell is talking to him and he's like saying, "We have some boys on the retainer. I You did like boys, didn't you?" And Varys like shakes his head. He's like, "Huh, girls. Forgive me for saying I never would have guessed. Not at all. But I was never into girls either. What then? Nothing. Everybody is interested in something. Not me. And when I see what desire has done to this realm, I'm very happy to have had no part in it." And someone
wow.
else
See
put
that
down the con section. Someone else put in the con section, it's Oberyn's bisexuality not being able to understand Varys's asexuality. Yeah.
that's perfect. But
Yeah.
oh goodness. Oh, you gotta admit this character did have a lot of forward thinking without being too in your face about it for people to like make 1,000 hate videos about it. Well, at the time.
Yeah. At the time, who's to say what would have happened if it come out today? Yeah.
But oh goodness, especially all the Danny power scenes. Oh, speaking of Danny, the whole infamous. I remember the papers, like the Click articles, had to talk about the troublesome image at the end of Millicent, where she's after she's liberated the city with all the Moroccan extras reaching out for the one pale lady,
Yeah, one fail.
and you're going,
Who's
oh
in the
no,
center of it all? And it's
the
like,
white savior,
oh, the
like
white savior trope.
which I don't think it was trying to go for, but
Yeah,
it.
but oof, kind of. Someone didn't think twice about that, or they did think twice, but they just didn't have the education to realize. You don't see how this looks.
Yeah, it is a beautiful moment, but you're also going.
Yeah,
I can see how this ammunition for those thinking that's a problem.
yeah, exactly.
Oh god, I remember people taking a big issue with the browbeating that Tyrion gives. It's almost like a meta fourth wall break about the audience itself, saying, "Everywhere she goes, bad people die, and we cheered
We
her."
cheer her for it. Yeah.
And it's like just like telling your show, "Shame on you for following the crazy dragon lady."
Yeah, shame on you for this. It's like, on some level, like you sort of understand what they maybe thought they were saying, which is like, oh well, Danny's always seen violence as the answer, but maybe that wasn't a good thing. And like there's ways they could have set that up better, but it's like, it's again that case, like again, they just didn't know how to end this,
Oh
and
god,
it's
that's
like,
the biggest fumble is the fact that they had to rush. They could have had maybe 2 more seasons, 3 more seasons, but they said we're just ending at season 8 because we're going to do Star Wars for a project that
yeah,
never happens. That's what's the tragedy
yeah,
of this whole thing. Ultimately, you sunk your
yeah,
greatest cash
exactly.
cow for nothing.
Yep,
Thank God
exactly.
for House of the Dragon turning things around.
Yeah, exactly. Although Benioff and Wise, I don't think are involved in that.
No,
So,
yeah,
Benioff and Wise, they still took a hit.
oh yeah.
Have they even done anything
That's
since Game
this
of Thrones? I haven't even heard anything about them. It's
last
like they
I
disappeared.
last I heard they were trying to make this alternative history Civil War thing come to life, but that didn't get picked up for obvious reasons. Like
You're
I
right. The Confederacy.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I think it
That's
was.
not getting made because, yeah.
I think that was a what if
I
the
mean, they technically already made that one. Like, I think, yeah.
wasn't
What
that
the
like
Confederacy
the
one? Sorry, can you still hear me?
yeah I can. I think that's kind of like the man in high tower
Okay.
concept they were probably going for, but oof.
Yeah, but not exactly.
Just and the fact that they
Yeah.
torpedoed it for a Star Wars project that ended up not happening at all is the biggest like slap in the face. And you're like, ooh, okay, yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, I was able to like not take it to its stride, but I do laugh at the fumbles, like the fact that a modern day Starbucks cup was like left on the set and no one thought to even
Yeah, on a
CGI
shot.
that stuff.
Yeah. I know, because no one just,
They were
nobody
all checked
noticed. And
out.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all just checked out, want to get everything known. Yeah.
Oh goodness. Oh yeah, there was another character I tend to really like. I did like Gendry. The Robert's bastard
Yeah.
son. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of female characters actually I like that ended up displaying. Oh, I loved that one from Essos that Daenerys saved that became like her right hand lady. That when she
Yeah.
I love with her defiant where she's just telling Danny to go ahead and burn them all with her car says her last words before being beheaded. And I love her even think someone pointed out to Cersei, you cut off her friend's head in front of the city for all to see. How did you think this was gonna happen?
Yeah. exactly. And what was her name? Was it Masunde
Yeah,
or
but Sunday, yeah. And then
yeah,
there was of course, Loras was fun. The
yeah,
Marjorie, just oh gosh, she was on another level of I think she was Cersei definitely saw her as a threat, like not more than just anything.
yeah,
It was almost like Snow White and the and the old Queen type
yeah.
vibes
The
too.
evil queen. Yeah, exactly. Because Marjorie is very, sweet, but she's also like very cunning and politically savvy, and yeah,
I bet you a what if history would have had fun if what if the Tyrells had sided with Rob's rebellion and Marjorie went for Rob or something like that.
yeah. Went for Rob Stark or Robert.
Rob Stark, yeah. Although
Yeah,
it's funny that when you think about it, there's two Rob rebellions. There's
yeah.
the
Two
Baratheon one,
rebellions.
and then the Stark one, the Clash of Kings.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, history repeats itself. Like even in like A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, they're talking about a recent Targaryen civil war that's not the one that's in House of Dragon, but it's one that happened hundreds of years later. So it's just Westeros is a very cyclical place. Yeah.
Ooh, and the guy that Sirium Hines played, Manx Raider, I think the name of the wildling
Yeah,
guy.
Mance Raider. Yeah.
I liked that
The
guy.
Wildly. Yeah, he was cool.
Uh, I mean, there are just tons of enjoyable characters that, and I know people go, "Oh, the deaths and violence are shocking," and only when it's done cheaply, like Barrister Salmi, is it like, okay, you didn't need to do that. But most of the time, they do a decent job of at least earning their deaths that do make
Yeah.
an impact. Like losing Hodor that
Yeah.
way, you go, "Oh, damn!" And you learn his death happens right when you learn the secret of why he was a halfway, and you go like, "Oh, that's something."
That's true.
And
Yeah.
then, oh god, I loved that flashback with the third eyed Raven showing Bran Stark the Tower of Joy fight with Sir Arthur Dayne the
Yeah.
Blade, and that guy. I'm like, I could watch a whole series about that sword fighter. I don't know why. I just got like
Yeah.
he
He just comes off as that intimidate. Yeah.
like he's like
Intimidate.
Lancelot. I think that would be the best comparison to give him to
Yeah.
in North.
Lancelot or Galahad. Yeah. Galahad might be better because Lancelot has a whole having an affair with Guinevere thing that kind of sullies his image. Yeah.
Oh, Derica's in our crowd. Hello, and she's saying, "Oh my gosh, you two are still at it. I'll leave you for one episode, and you're going into overtime." Well, I was going to just talk about the first season, and we kind of just bled into just talking about the overall series, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like in 15 years, it's people still remember things about it. Thankfully, that's the thing. I mean, you still got the church that say, "I drink and I know things," based off of Tyrion's line.
Tyrion. Yeah.
You get people still saying winter's coming or the North remembers. We got people that come from it that have become bigger stars, like Bella Ramsey got her start as Lyanna Mormont. I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was like her first. I think that was her first acting job, at least like in a show. And then she got other jobs, like she was Hilda, I think,
hmm
like a Netflix show.
and then
Yeah,
Last of Us really like took off for her, and oh god, Last of Us 2 ended up probably sending her back a few, not her fault, but yeah.
yeah, not her fault, but just what happens.
And
Yeah,
then, like I said, as Pedro Pascal got a higher profile because of even though his character was brief, he left quite the impression.
yeah,
And like I said, Lena Headley is amazing as Cersei. Even though she like I remember her from as Sarah Connor in the Sarah Connor
Sarah
Chronicles.
Connor Chronicles. Yeah,
And I mean the legacy is just like we can go on all day. Like we're just talking, remembering our favorite moments, and like I said, we're people who only got onto the show as of recently. I mean, imagining how it must feel for the people who actually were there from day one and they got to see the Red Wedding
yeah.
happen or see the set blow up, all that kind of feeling.
There's
And
the people who first bought the book, back when it was new.
and
Yeah,
then they realize this is coming to life. And I mean, you always will get that crowd of the book that realize the book's toning it down. To be honest, this should look or be a certain way much more elaborate and colorful than what the show gave us. But I think House of the
yeah,
Dragon hits that fine line of what we liked about Game of Thrones: the intrigue, the character dynamics, the violence when it does happen. Because there's less action in House of the Dragon in season one, as far as I know.
yeah.
But
There is.
but also it has things where things work out, things don't work out, and you're like on. I remember one scene that just got me like, okay, I'm locked in already. I was locked in, but even more locked in was the Aegon being a fool for the first half of the season, but after the death of Viserys and he has to be crowned, that whole
Yeah,
moment of him marching from the gate to the procession where Otto's waiting for him, as Otto is declaring this proud moment, you end up getting hyped up with him as Aegon goes from being, I
Yeah.
don't know if I can do this, to damn right I'm king in a way that feels natural.
Yeah,
Only
exactly.
to cower when Rhaenys comes in with her big ass dragon to like roar in their face to say, "Yeah,
Yeah.
screw you."
Yeah, screw you. I could have killed you at this moment, but yeah.
Oh, but I think Aegon the movie has me excited if that is indeed a movie because I figured that'd be a great entry point. Why? What better way to get new people to revisit this 15-year-old series than to see the story of the thing that forged the bloody object everyone's going after?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And if they can, get the right actors, then more the merrier. But and that's a pretty short story, if I recall. Like even in like the Fire and Blood book, I think it's actually a pretty small chapter dedicated to that. Yeah,
but oh yeah,
there's a lot to pull from. Yeah,
I think it says this series, yeah, it kind of got a little big for its britches by becoming more about the spectacle of it. Like when at one point it was the most expensive show made at HBO, and you can. But
yeah,
the thing is, you can see the money on the screen. The dragons look
yeah.
fantastic. The vistas and landscapes are
Look
unparalleled. It's
fantastic.
just
The visuals never disappointed in the
mm,
last season, even if like writing, dialogue, character motivation, even if that failed, uh, the soundtrack, visuals always top
and
notch.
if there's
Yeah,
one thing, what makes me laugh is there's guys who started as Game of Thrones directors that try to venture out and don't quite land for some reason, like
yeah,
Alan Taylor, who's done some of my
yeah,
favorite episodes of Game of Thrones, went on to do Thor: The Dark World and Terminator Genesis, and
yeah. Ooh,
although it's funny
yeah,
that Danny's in that one too. In fact, I remember James Perkins said when he saw the trailer for Genesis and he saw Emilia yell, "Come with me if you want to live," he's like, "Dude, go with her. She has dragons."
yeah. It's funny how much her English accent sound or her American accent sounded like Jennifer Lawrence. For some reason, that was always the thing that popped out.
Yeah, that's true. Uh,
Yeah,
and I heard that Danny was Emilia Clarke was a last minute recast after the original one opted not to continue in the at the
yeah,
pilot, and it's
yeah,
hard to imagine anyone else as her. I mean, hell, she is in Fortnite now. That's her
yeah.
face is immortalized as Daenerys, the mother of mother of
Mother of
dragons.
Dragons.
And I
Yeah,
don't know if she's gotten anything big since then. It's probably not fair that she isn't, but you gotta admit she did leave a hell of an impact.
yeah. Regardless of the rest of her career, that role alone is like, that's her legacy,
Like for a
so far.
fact when she eventually passes years from decades from now, she'll be listed. One thing will be listed as Game of Thrones actress.
Yeah, that'll be it. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I make you wonder if Sean Bean finally shuffles off of what he'll best be known for.
Yeah. Well, he's like a Boromir. Who was he in Troy? Or was he even in Troy? Sorry, why am I even bringing up Troy right
I
now?
do find it funny that Silent Hill is the one series where you expect him to go where he doesn't.
He doesn't, yeah. And somehow he's in two. He's in both of those. He's in the first two, and
Hmm.
not in Return of Silent Hill for obvious reasons.
But
Because
like I said though, I think if someone says a character is good when they've been dead for 7 seasons and they still are remembered fondly as one of the best characters, and Ned Stark.
yeah, exactly. Because yeah, well, because like I said, he's the beating heart of that first season. Him and Robert's relationship. Yeah, and both those actors did incredible jobs. It's funny to listen to those, incredibly dense conversations and suddenly remember, oh right, neither of these characters are even going to make it out of this season.
I know you're thinking like, I know you almost get fooled into thinking, maybe it'll be different this time, even though it's the same story. But like maybe Robert won't be too hasty. Maybe he'll go back to Ned and listen to him, or
Yeah,
maybe Ned
exactly.
Ned will tell Stannis in secret and not try to even tell
Yeah,
Cersei.
try to not even tell Cersei anything. Yeah,
Like I still like people calling Stanish the Manish. It just makes me laugh every time. I don't know
yeah.
why.
Stannis the man is, yeah, because he is kind of the man.
And
When
what's
he
funny
makes
is
when he
that
has like,
Stephen Delany admitted he had no idea what he was doing. He was actually uncertain about his choices as the character, but the writing and people says, ironically, he ended up playing Stannis exactly how he describes in the book. He admits he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's doing what he thinks is for the good of the realm.
yeah, exactly.
That
And that's why he gives such a decent, memorable performance.
and that's why
Wolf's
his
played his trick can only play it once.
Although his death though is let down. It just kind of happens. He's already been
Yes.
beaten by Ramsey, and Brianna gets to have him, and it's not a moment of triumph for her finally getting revenge for Remley. It's just like
Yeah.
it's an
It's
understated
duty.
death.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's the
At
point
least
of
he
it.
kills a bunch. Yeah, but at least he kills some guy. At least he kills some of Ramsey's soldiers. At least like we see that happening before he goes out.
Oh, that was another moment people love. The Battle of the Bastards. That moment where John is like, uh, back against the wall. Basically, he just turns around, ready to face on an entire horde of that charging army. That's become like a
Yeah,
defining moment from that series. Is at the Battle of the
yeah.
Bastards.
Defining image. Yeah,
Yeah, we again. It's so funny that he's reduced to "I don't want it, but she is my queen" by the end of this series.
yeah. Sad.
Someone says it's about as useful as a blobfish.
Yeah,
All right. We can go on all night, but
yeah. Okay.
I want to thank you for taking the time to just do this because it's been really fun. I can tell we've had some real
Yeah,
profound memories, like oh this and that,
yeah.
and
You're welcome. Honestly, I was looking forward to this all week. I mean,
that's good.
at work, I was thinking to myself, "Oh man, I can't wait till
Was there
I hope I
anything?
get to do this." Yeah.
Was there
What?
anything that you wanted to like bring up that you remember, like oh I can't really explain this part and that part?
I think I talked about everything I wanted to. I've always wanted to talk about the magic of Game of Thrones and sort of like
That's the
it is
thing
kind
that
of interesting because it's still like very because it is interesting like when you see it and realize that like it is like that combination of like Tolkien and Lovecraft, and it's like it's a very interesting kind of magic system and it's something that's kind of sometimes a little like brushed under the rug for whatever reason, but it's still cool. Yeah.
now. Do you think they'll ever make a post season 8 story, even without Winds of Winter or Dream of Spring made?
I don't put it past them right now. I'm not 100% sure because the project they've greenlit have been George R. R. Martin's books. So I guess it's a case of we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I know the Jon Snow spinoff was something they were talking about for a while, whatever they were going to do with that. And I know some people are talking about maybe doing like maybe they could get into like the more supernatural aspects of that if they picked up Jon Snow's life. But again, we'll see. I know
Also,
my mom still wants them to remake season 8.
fat chance, but who knows?
But
Maybe another one day, however impossible, HBO might eventually have to let go of the license, and another major studio can get a crack at adapting a Song of
yeah,
Ice and Fire. But I don't think so.
yeah,
This is one of the things that built HBO, so I don't think they're ever gonna like let it go. They have to pull it out from
no,
their cold purchased fingers.
yeah, exactly.
We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I'll see.
Well, Paramount is chomping at the bit to get their own Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, every services, every streaming service looking for something.
Even think about it. Whenever a new mature series for some property comes out, people describe it as the Game of Thrones of this. Like I remember people like saying that Alien Earth was going to be almost like the Game of Thrones for the corporations there, and it kind of is. But you
Yeah,
still have the whole lost children aspect and
yeah, Lost
xenomorph,
Children,
and you're
and
going like,
yeah.
but I think if you saw any of my reviews, my favorite parts of Alien Earth, have you gotten far in it?
I have I didn't finish the first season until recently, but I did finally do that. Yeah, and
I was gonna say that
I've seen the entire first season, so yeah.
my favorite
Spoil
scenes
anything.
were the scenes of the kid prodigy guy just having dialogues with the other corporate heads, and that is very Game of Thrones coded when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. It's very much like, we're having a conversation that, maybe seems, innocent on the surface, but is actually like very tense and, almost life or death. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Being decided by a conversation. Yeah. And yeah, I agree. It is very Game of Thrones.
And it still left an impact 15 years later. So whether or not the finale, a lot of series have a hard time sticking the landings. I heard
Yeah.
recently Stranger Things had that issue, but
Yeah, I know it. My brother was more into Stranger Things than I am, but yeah, he was not a very big fan of. Well, he wasn't a big fan when they revealed the origin of the Upside Down because he liked it better when it was something kind of unknowable versus something that I guess someone else made.
what's funny is even though they showed a hint at the beginning of the White Walkers, they still didn't give a conclusive answer. So I guess the White Walkers still have their unknowingness to them. But then
Yeah.
they just get blown up by a simple sword stab. So who
So,
knows?
well, they're gone now. So, yeah.
And on this the scary threat, Martin says, "What if the White Walkers weren't the thing the wall was trying to protect from?"
Yeah. Oh.
I also remember that was a big moment of season 7 when the dead Viserys was brought back. I think it was Viserys who died, or it was one of
Yeah, the Viserion, the
the
dragon.
Syrian.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
got brought back and then he
blows
shattered
up
the
the wall.
wall.
But
Yeah.
mhm. But yeah. Anyway, I'll go ahead and let you go because it's already been long enough. But thank you
Yeah,
for
it has.
joining
It has
me.
been long, but I've enjoyed this. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Yeah.
But thank you.
Have a
Well,
good night.
you all have a good night, and thank you all for watching this. This is Johnny Cat 79 signing off, and I really do gotta go. So take care.
Yeah. Take care.